You see your post at the Derby? See, dream is not real stuff. These mics. Recreation meeting to order. And Amy, if you could take that over.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Jackson. The first item on the agenda tonight is the presentation of the Somerville Parks Foundation 2023 Annual Report. I just wanted to share a little bit of history about the Somerville Parks Foundation. I know we've got a couple of new faces since that was created, but when I first was looking at organizing this, I had reached out to the National Association of Parks Foundations. And that's exactly what it sounds like. It is a foundation for foundations. They are so widespread and common practice now that this is a fairly large organization, and it provides resources, board training, network, other opportunities. And so I've provided you all with two pieces of literature tonight. One is the Somerville Parks Foundation brochure, and that's just to tell you a little bit about the purpose and the vision. It is a nonprofit 501c3. It's completely independent from the town. The bylaws for the organization are very specific. They exist to support the town of Somerville Parks and Recreation Department. The second document that I provided you all was the existing MOU. So this outlines the relationship between the Somerville Parks Foundation and the town of Somerville. So everything's documented and is very organized. This document actually came from the city of Virginia Beach. It was their MOU. I got it through the National Parks Association, or the National Parks Foundation Association. So these two organizations really share a symbiotic relationship. There's a lot of opportunities for grants, fundraising that nonprofits are eligible for that municipal government may not be, and vice versa. So it's really opened a lot of doors for us. And we have an amazing board. They're all volunteers, and they have just been very supportive. They love Somerville. They love the park system. So with that, I would like to invite Steve Doniger up to share the annual report.
Thank you, members of the committee. It's my honor to serve as the chairperson for the second year for the foundation. I want to say this has been a labor of love. We have such a great community and a fantastic park system led by, and I'm embarrassed here with Amy and her crew, just people that generally care about everything that we're trying to get accomplished, and good work from predecessors and support from council on some of the great things that we've been doing. The committee itself had some significant wins this past year with over $171,000 in total investment that was made on behalf of the community. Those are two significant investments with the pickleball courts at South Alexandra Court, with a couple of generous donors on that, and the assistance working with Leadership Dorchester and rallying up other in-kind services and volunteers and funds in order to redo Hugie Playground to match up some of the other tax dollars that went into that. We're excited as we're moving forward. We'll be announcing here shortly a big major fundraising campaign. We have some new folks that have recently joined the foundation as well. So it's also great having all these citizens and friends that be advocates for parks and recreation to come out and support and volunteer and do lots of different things. So we're energized to continue this. We respect the partnership we have with the town. I should be clear that Park Foundation's whole goal is to work in conjunction with and off the master plan and off the guidelines from our park superintendent and from this committee. We're not the organization that comes in and says you should do this or any type of dictation at all. We're here to help find resources and find solutions to things that are in the master plan and within the vision plan, and to help be that resource for the town. So with that, I'll answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's a check.
Did y'all have any questions for me about the Somerville Parks Foundation?
I have a question. I have a question on item B,
Okay.
but you haven't gotten.
I haven't got there.
so-
Yeah, no, hopefully I'll explain it as we go. Okay, so moving on to item B, foundation opportunities. The first one being the Sweet Tea Half Marathon. This is something that I brought to council last year, and just to kind of explain it so everyone's aware. The registrations for the Sweet Tea Half Marathon, they go through a third-party registration software. So what we did last year is we allowed, the Somerville Parks Foundation to be added on basically when you're checking out. So if you register for the half marathon, the 5K, as you check out, it will prompt you and say, would you like to donate money to the foundation? They can click no, they can click yes, then they can put in an amount. So then if they choose to donate, then those funds get cut to the town at the end of the registration period. We print a report and the town then provides that money back to the foundation. So we did just open registration for the Sweet Tea Half Marathon, and this is something we wanted to make sure everyone was okay and comfortable doing with again last year. We raised just, I want to say it was like $980 last year by doing it.
Lisa, that's not something we have to vote on, is it? Allowing a donation? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess unless somebody calls you and opposes, we'll just make that a permanent thing.
Okay. Wonderful. The second item is the Splash Pad sponsorship. So the Somerville Parks Foundation has been trying to wrap around the Splash Pad construction project by fundraising for shade canopies. Currently, there in the budget, there was no money for that. We need roughly around $25,000 to accomplish that. And that would be 4 shade structures. The foundation, the board members have been working very hard. We've been meeting with different businesses, individuals, and we just hadn't made a lot of traction. And so we decided to step back and take a slightly different approach. And so we're looking for one big sponsor. And we did identify one that was interested, and they have verbally committed to it, and that is First Citizens Bank. So what they've agreed to is they've agreed to fund the full $25,000. Part of that money is coming from their foundation, so it's very helpful to them to transfer it from a foundation to our foundation. But with that, the splash pad would be named after the bank for the 20 years, beginning obviously at the beginning of the opening. On the sign, it would say like First Citizens Bank Splash Pad or something along that iteration. Y'all would have be able to look at that sign ahead of time. The First Citizens logo and link, we would put that on that particular page with the splash pad. And then just some other little things that we had agreed to, like a banner at Gahagan, a team sponsorship for the fall season this year, and a logo on the Sweet Tea Half Marathon t-shirts. So just some minor little sponsorship things that we do. Looking at sponsorships, I know that it sounds kind of scary to put someone's name, but the town does have a pretty long-standing history of sponsorships. If you look at Saul Alexander Park, that park is named after the gentleman that donated the funds there. Brown Family Park in Nexton is named after the family that donated that land. The pickleball courts are the sparkling ice pickleball courts. So there certainly is a lot of precedence for something like this. Are there any questions that I could answer for you guys?
What is the process and who determines which opportunities for the Parks Foundation are chosen or added to this list?
To which list?
The opportunities for the Parks Foundation,
So
like the splash pad and half marathon.
yeah. So a large part of it is me, knowing what didn't get funded through the budget process, where the holes are and what's needed. And so I bring a lot of opportunities, I would say, to I do a staff report every time the board meets and kind of give them opportunities, and they kind of pick and choose which ones they feel like they could support or maybe help us accomplish. And then if you guys are or comfortable moving forward with this agreement, what I would do is I would work with GW to draft an MOU between the town, First Citizens, and the Somerville Parks Foundation, just so that everything's outlined and there's no misunderstandings.
And how many opportunities can we have in a year? Is it just dependent, I guess, on how many owners we have, right?
Well, it kind of, we have historically only kind of focused on one at a time. Just because, and Mr. Jackson knows he attends a lot of those meetings. I mean, they're all volunteers. So we're not trying to go in 100 different directions. We've been very project centered. So when, they identify a project, we kind of focus on that, fundraise for that, try to get that accomplished, and then we move on to the next. Now, as we continue to grow and have a little bit more funding, because we started with nothing. So as we continue, it may look different, but right now we've been solely just one project at a time.
Mhm. Thank you.
Do we need to make a motion to move it forward to council to accept a donation?
Let me ask you one other thing. Did you, when do you anticipate they'll get the flat splash pads done on Doty Park?
So, the last item on the agenda, which we can skip to really quick, is the splash pad construction update. I did want to let you guys know that has been delayed. When they poured the seating wall, it was not done in a satisfactory manner. I did have them pull that seating wall out, and they just reported that the end of last week. And they did a fabulous job. So now it looks very good. Now we're getting ready to move forward. I expect the most of the construction to be done in the next 2 to 3 weeks. However, we can't put the final surface on it for 30 days after they pour the concrete. So most likely we're looking at an end of June, 1st of July, unfortunately.
Are you dealing with any change orders?
No, sir. No, sir. It was a workmanship issue, and so we didn't have to pay for it.
Thank you.
And can we possibly look in the future to add the sidewalk walking loop around Doty to the Parks Foundation opportunities? Is that something that would be in the realm of what?
I'm gonna double check our like I said, our bylaws are extremely specific. So I would want to just read through those one more time to make sure, because that is outside of the boundaries of a park, but I feel like it most likely could be.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, Lisa.
Say, once the agreement is drawn up, then the go back to full council.
Okay, thank you.
So I'll move for that.
Move to adjourn.
No.
Oh, yes. All in favor?
And that's to draft the memorandum of understanding.
Right.
Yes.
And I guess if it's done by Thursday, it can go on the agenda.
Yes, and once
Okay.
I have that MOU, I'll bring that back for you guys for final approval. And that was everything on our agenda tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Do
you.
I have a fair motion to adjourn?
Make a motion that we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Steady.
All right, we'll call the Planning and Development Committee meeting to order, and Jesse, I will.
All right.
Turn it over to you.
Thank you. Good evening. And first item on the agenda is the discussion of request for a letter of support for the Woda Cooper companies for their state tax credit application for a project at 615 North Cedar Street. The South Carolina Housing, has changed some of their requirements for applications where, applicant does now have to have a letter of support from the jurisdiction in which the application is located. So this, property, it's actually two separate pieces of property that they'd combine into one, at the corner of West Fifth North Street, North Cedar Street, and West Sixth North Street. So it's, I can provide you with additional information if you'd like. It was in the staff report, kind of what they're looking to do. But if you have any questions specifically, regarding that.
Have they submitted anything for this yet, Jesse? I guess they don't have. a
No,
plan
so
or
they don't
anything yet,
ever
right?
submit anything
Yeah.
usually until they,
They
you
they
know,
can do the
yeah.
job.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And this would put us in a similar situation as the apartments on Trolley Road.
I don't know in terms of whether they are working with a nonprofit, if that's what you're asking. And
Yeah,
I do know that the legislature is looking at changing that,
Mm.
the way that works as well.
Looks like this is more of a assisted situation here. Is that,
Well,
it's,
they all are, but
Well,
they,
yeah,
they get
right,
out of
right,
paying
right.
any taxes.
Yeah,
at
so
all.
I believe what Councilman Jackson is speaking of is the fact that there was a state law passed that exempted these properties from property taxes if they were partially owned by a nonprofit. Unfortunately, that state law didn't tell how much had to be owned by a nonprofit. So even if it was only like 5%, it would still exempt them entirely from property tax. So my understanding is the state legislature is working on getting that changed. Whether that will get completed in the next 3 days, I don't know. But I'm not aware of whether this group is working with a nonprofit as well.
So why those two parcels?
Those were just the parcels they'd identified. They've been available for a long time, for sale. And honestly, in terms of, affordable housing, they're in a good location. They're within walking distance of a grocery store. They're within walking distance of a large number of potential job opportunities with a lot of retail, fast food in that general area. And, they're also within walking distance of a transit stop. So, for the Tri-County Link. So it is actually a pretty good location in terms of where you would locate, affordable housing for folks who may not always have access to a car.
Well, I measured both parcels to be about 1.8 acres,
It is,
1.88 maybe.
thought I put it on here. Maybe I did not.
in the staff report.
I think
Maybe.
it's approximately,
Okay, so that would make the density of over 22 units per acre, which seems, I know they have to have at least 40 units to qualify, but that seems excessively dense for that location, given the,
it is zoned downtown mixed use, so that's the ideal type of density for a downtown area. They're looking at a 4-story building, so that is kind of what you'd expect to see in a more downtown urban design.
have you seen any concept plans yet? I mean, can they
No, sir.
physically fit 42 units and 85 parking spaces or?
I have not seen any concept plans yet. It would have to go before the DRB. So that would come, I mean, they don't even know if they're going to get the approval for the tax credits. So they generally don't start those concept plans until they're a
Until they
little bit
get all
further down the
approval.
line.
So they know whether or not they can feasibly do the project. So that makes sense.
Correct.
I get it.
Correct.
Any other questions about this one?
I personally don't know that I could make a decision on this because we don't know
Just too
anything.
much we don't know about the
We've been
project.
bit
Right.
before. In the Oak Brook area alone, my observation is we have got hundreds of units for workforce. But the people in Oak Brook can't find anybody to take a job. And it just doesn't make sense to me.
I just know that as far as location goes, we don't know what it's gonna look like, but there's a lot of plans for that particular area in the near future, I think. So that's just something to think about too, as far as, moving down the road with that that particular area. I wasn't as excited about the location, but I understand why they like it too, with the points that you made. So it's kind of one of those situations, but. We haven't,
I think they like it because it's available.
right, well, yeah, one as well. Do we want to make any motions?
I agree with Councilman Jackson. I'd like to get a little more information before we commit to it. At least a concept plan would be easy enough, it seems to do.
Yeah, I don't think they would be able to do a concept plan until they have a better idea of, whether they're gonna get the project. But I mean, I can certainly request that of them.
Okay.
Well, I do know, we did turn down the project in Oak Brook in one place for those tax benefits.
Yeah, I mean, this previously came before y'all, but at that time they were actually asking for money to help with the application. This time, no money is being requested. It's literally just a letter of support for affordable housing in that location.
The same group came, just,
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
do we want to motion to send this to council without a recommendation?
What would be
I
your
think,
recommendation?
No,
I
we
think
can
we
send it to
just,
council without a recommendation.
I think we just don't send it to council
Don't send it
until
to
we have
council.
more information, because they're not gonna be able to make a decision either, because
Okay.
they don't have any information.
Okay.
So you gonna
I
make a
don't-
motion?
I mean, we don't have to have a motion if it's not.
I was gonna say, you gotta have some type, I mean, you can hold it, I guess.
I make a
Postpone
motion
it?
that we hold it until we have further information.
I'll second that.
Motion and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Sir, Jesse, is there,
You want to provide more information?
Yeah. I'd love to hear
I'd
from
love
you
to hear
though.
from you. Yeah, come on. I saw you after we were already kind of halfway in. Sorry.
So I'm Parker Ziam with Woda Cooper Companies. So on the first question about the nonprofit tax exemption, we're not working with a nonprofit specifically because I've worked with nonprofits elsewhere in South Carolina, but we wanted to work without one to be able to provide the tax base. We're projecting a tax base of, I think it's 87,000 a year. On the there was a question about the location. So in terms of what drew us to this location, like Jesse mentioned, there's certain location criteria that are attractive for workforce residents, like the bus stop being close in the downtown mixed corridor district area. And also across West Fifth North, I believe Dorchester County recently had a RFP where they're redeveloping their county building into a larger mixed-use development as well. So hopefully this development would be in line with what they're proposing there and what has gone through the RFP process. And we do have a concept plan. We have, I forget the exact number, but we're fitting 66 parking spaces on the property, which corresponds to 1 parking space for every 1-bedroom unit, 1.5 parking spaces for every 2-bedroom unit, and 2 parking spaces for every 3-bedroom unit.
How many of each are you planning? 1, 2, and 3s? Or do
Um,
you have a breakdown or do you don't?
Yep, we have a breakdown of 6 1-bedroom units, 25 2-bedroom units, 11 3-bedroom units. The 11 3-bedroom units was specifically chosen because in addition to the South Carolina housing requirement for a minimum 40 units, they require exactly 25% of those units rounded up or down to the nearest whole unit to be 3 bedrooms.
Have you already got into and done any traffic analysis or anything? I guess there's too early in the process for that.
We haven't done any traffic impact analysis, but we work with a lot of developments that have gone through the process and have used the IT trip estimates, and just based on those estimates, I believe peak hour would be give or take 20 trips per hour.
Is the concept plan that you have something that you're able or willing to share with us?
Yes.
Okay.
As in right now, like.
If you have it, yeah, absolutely. You're here, I'm here. Let's figure it out.
This is it's black and white, but
Right.
that's the colored elevation. Basically, we're fronting it on West Fifth North with an L shape to also have some frontage on North Cedar. The entrance would be off West Sixth North. We're maintaining a larger setback because of the proposed expansion of West Fifth North there from SCDOT. And then maintaining the larger setback due to the large road of right of way on West Sixth North Street. And also the setback from I believe there's like a rail or the old railroad right of way that runs along Cedar.
Right.
And then
Yep.
in this, we're including amenities such as a playground and a picnic and grill area for the residents.
Jesse, after the letter goes through and forgive, after we get the letter, what's the next step? If council were to approve the letter, what's the next step after that? Is that when they start getting in TRC meetings and those things along those? two- Right. I got you. So this step is basically almost a yay or nay for you guys as far as whether you move forward after that, after this. And to go any further down the road, y'all want to have this letter, I guess, of support.
Yeah, the letter of support helps, as Jesse mentioned, helps us with our application to
Right.
South Carolina Housing, which the application to them is due May 24th. And then after that, they're currently giving a award date for tax credits of September. So we should know in September if we have the financing to move forward. And from that point, we really start our design development and more advanced plans and going through the like TRC process and permitting process, which we usually anticipate to be about a 8 to 10 month process. So we'd be looking at, if successful and everything goes according to plan, about mid 2025 construction start.
Mhm.
Well, Mr. Jackson, you asked for more information and you got it. Probably about the quickest we've ever.
Yeah,
come on
that
motion.
was pretty fast.
You got ammo, man. Use it.
Yeah.
You almost walked away with a no.
If y'all want to, will you consider a motion send it to council now?
Yep, I will. I'll make a motion that we.
Second.
All right, motion and a second, send to council with a recommendation or
correct.
without? Or with a recommendation or no recommendation?
No recommendation.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate you coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's probably the shortest we've ever held anything.
All right. The next item on the agenda is a site plan approval for Dreams Short Central Beautification Project within Central Avenue and West Second South Street right of way. Central Avenue right away is owned by the town of Somerville, West Second South Street. We talked with SCDOT and they are willing to quit claim that block of West Second South Street to us as well. We have the next block down, but we don't currently have that block. That will go before the Public Works Committee next month in terms of accepting that quit claim from SCDOT. Basically, I know the Parks and Recreation Committee saw the entire kind of plan for Short Central. This is just focusing on this end at West Second South Street. Beth, do you have the actual, they have the site plan? Okay.
Okay.
So you should have the existing plan or existing conditions and then the proposed site plan. Because this is in town right of way, it does need to be approved by council in terms of the plan. And then once it's approved by council, then it will go to BAR for review and approval for the structure. So are there any questions on this?
And y'all already done TRC on this as well?
Yes, sir. We did do TRC on this, and there were very few comments or concerns. Just a few things with handicap parking, just making sure that's shown to meet code. And of course, making sure DOT was good with the quit claiming.
Yeah.
West Second
And
South
that's, is that the block? I'm sorry, I missed it. That's the block that's on the right if you're heading out this way? In between the brick Short Central and Cedar?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
at the point, more or less.
Mhm.
All right. No, I've always felt like this was a good
Great.
idea.
Yes.
Great, beautiful addition to downtown Short Central. And, the only comment I had looking through the things is make sure that we are working with our Parks Department and, to pull in the beautification efforts to make sure we're keeping a common theme and all that good stuff. And then, just talking to business owners, make sure we're keeping our business owners, all of them, I know we have some business owners that aren't members of Dream, but, we're still trying to keep them informed as well. So, but no, I don't have anything else to add.
I'll make a motion that we move it forward to full council with the recommendation of approval.
I'll second that.
A motion and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Right.
All right. The next 5 items are going to be proposed UDO amendments. So the first one is proposed amendments to the Somerville Unified Development Ordinance, Chapter 2, Section 2.3.6A encroachments, Chapter 4, Section 4.2.5 frontage encroachments, and Chapter 13, Section 13.7.1 zoning development permit. Planning Commission did hold a public hearing and make a recommendation for approval at their meeting on April 15th. These changes all relate to fencing. We've realized recently that fencing, particularly for non-single family residential projects, there was a loophole, whereas certain fencing did not have any type of design requirements. And so, just plain chain link, regular chain link, even technically barbed wire could we had no requirements. So this is trying to fix that loophole, basically. The section in Chapter 2 also deals with the height of fencing on along the right of way that's not a front yard. We dealt with it in a front yard, but we didn't previously have anything for a side yard that was also along the right of way, and so that's dealing with that as well.
So we're only dealing with fences that are visible from the right of way. Is that correct?
Correct.
And are we dealing with, in the commercial zones, we do have some residential. Would it also include them as well?
So it would not include single family detached, which is not allowed in most commercial zones. It is allowed in some of the mixed use zones, but primarily it would just deal with read exactly to make sure I'm not. Yeah, so it would still deal with the residential that's in those mixed use zoning districts. It would just not allow the chain link basically in those areas.
but only from what's visible from the road. So they could conceivably do
They could have it in the backyard.
a wood or vinyl fence from on the portion facing the road and then chain link down the sides and back.
Well, it's one of those things where it's not allowed unless you have DRB or BAR approval. So, you know, if they want it for residents and it's in the backyard, nobody's ever going to see it. I'm sure DRB or BAR, whichever, could grant that approval.
Mhm.
BAR doesn't grant it ever for chain link.
Yeah.
But they have granted it for some of the like kind of chicken, more of the historical chicken wire fencing in the rear or something like that. But they generally are not gonna, generally not gonna grant chain link fencing. So
Is there a specific situation recently that this would have come into play?
yes, sir.
Where is that?
Adjacent to Laura.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. that's
We also have a property on Boone Hill where it would have come into play as well.
Okay.
Any other comments or questions?
I'll make a motion that we move forward to full council, section C, D, E, F, and G for approval.
C, D,
Wait a minute,
E,
hold
F,
on.
oh, yeah.
No, let's take these one.
Yeah.
One at a time.
Yes,
I'm
sir.
not ready to do D and E
Okay.
yet.
Well,
How about just
section
C?
C.
Yes, sir. I'll second that motion.
Have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor? Aye.
All right, the next item on the agenda is proposed amendments to the Somerville Unified Development Ordinance, Chapter 3, Section 3.3, Table of Permitted Uses, and Section 3.4.5E, Tobacco Alternative Sales Store, and Chapter 15, Section 15.3, Definitions of Terms. Planning Commission held a public hearing and made a recommendation for approval at their meeting on April 15th, 2024. Basically, this is really just adding CBD and CBD alternatives to an existing conditional use we already have that basically covers tobacco and vaping. So this is just adding those. And also we did slightly decrease the separation of these stores from like schools, that type of thing, because we were getting to the point where we're almost zoning them out, which we're not allowed to do.
So you decreased it from 1,000 to 750?
Correct. Yeah, we didn't decrease it a whole lot, but we did decrease it slightly to provide a little more potential areas where they could locate. We've noticed that a lot of the applicants that come in for, say, a vape store, and we tell them that they're not allowed. They're like, well, what about CBD? We're like, well, we don't currently cover CBD, so
So it's
technically
just-
CBD is
yeah.
allowed.
It's just a clean-
The other thing we are adding is signage as a part of the condition, in that if they are not actually approved for that conditional use, their sign cannot say tobacco, vape, CBD, anything like that. It
Okay.
must say something different. We've had a lot of folks who are not approved for a vape, and so they come in for a convenience store because it's not considered a vape store unless they have a certain percentage of their sales or display for vape, and still want to put vape on their sign. And we're like, no, you're not approved for that. But we wanted to put that specifically in the ordinance. And then we also were adding a definition for sensitive receptors, because that was in the ordinance, but it wasn't specifically defined.
Any other questions on this one? Need a
No.
motion?
I'll make a motion to move section D forward to full council for approval.
I'll second that motion.
A motion and a second. No other discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. The next one is proposed amendments to Somerville Unified Development Ordinance, Chapter 9, Section 9.3, Design Standards. Planning Commission held a public hearing, made a recommendation for approval at their meeting on April 15th. This is, again, addressing another loophole we discovered in our ordinance regarding strip lighting around particularly commercial buildings. It wasn't specifically addressed in our signage, and it wasn't specifically addressed in our lighting ordinance. And so we are addressing it in the lighting ordinance rather than the sign ordinance, because we do address lighting on signs, but these people, I apologize, that's not how I should say that. Sorry. Folks who have used this type of lighting have stated that it's not a sign, it's just around my window or it's just around my doorway. And so that's why it's being placed specifically in the lighting section of the ordinance rather than in the signage section, because it is pretty much addressed in the signage section already.
So you said you've received some complaints. What's the nature of the complaints? It's too bright or it's not character?
Yeah,
with-
we've received a lot of complaints. Some it's super bright because a lot of them are very, very bright. Others, it's out of character with the surrounding area, particularly in the historic district. We've had that. Others, they're basically outlining their entire building in the lighting. And so it's just, we've received multiple complaints from different people, not even the same people regarding that type of lighting.
Any other questions or do I hear a motion?
And generally, as we do with a lot of our stuff currently, we're not going to go seeking this out. It's primarily going to be when we receive a complaint, we actually have a way to enforce it.
Yeah,
Roll.
yeah. Mr. Jackson.
I'll make a motion that we move section E, thank you, can't see it. To full council for approval.
I'll second that.
A motion made in second. Any other discussion? Not all those in favor, say aye.
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 All right. Next one is proposed amendments to the Somerville Unified Development Ordinance, Chapter 13, Section 13.7.2, Building Permit, and Section 13.7.3, Certificate of Occupancy Permit. Planning Commission held a public hearing and made a recommendation for approval at their meeting on April 15th. These amendments are proposed by staff to help with our review of proposed building permit applications, particularly regarding zoning and building code requirements. I know Councilman Halter and Councilman Waring, y'all are both very aware of some of the issues that can arise with these types of permits, particularly on lots that already have a lot of stuff located on them or a lot of structures, or where you have a small setback. And so the building gets closer and closer to having to meet fire code requirements. And so this is honestly what we're trying to do is make review more efficient by requiring these surveys, because what happens is staff ends up going back and forth with the applicant trying to get a sufficient site plan that actually fully shows everything that's on the property. And by the time we finally get there and they finally go get a survey, they've lost 6 months of time haggling back and forth about what's needed. So this is really to try and make the process more efficient. We did make sure that we included language in there where that requirement could be waived if it wasn't necessary. You know, if they're not anywhere near the property lines, if they're not anywhere close to meeting their impervious surface requirement, we're not going to make you get a survey for that type of project. But it seems we are experiencing more and more projects where it is very close to the impervious surface limit, or you are, particularly with the smaller lots within PUDs, they are very close to the property lines, and we're having difficulty determining whether they're actually meeting requirements or not.
So I'm just trying to understand.
Mhm.
You're asking for a foundation survey before
So
inspection, but this is after a site plan has already been approved.
So part of it, so there's 3 different things we're asking for. The first one is an actual survey as the site plan submittal, like your survey is your site plan submittal is a survey rather than just being,
Drawing on
someone
a sheet of paper.
drawing it
Right.
up.
Thought that already was a requirement.
Sadly enough, no.
Okay.
It's kind of, it says it has to be a 2 scale, but most people can't draw things to scale without it really being a survey. But yes, it is not actually currently required. So that's the first part. The second part is the foundation survey. And that's again, to make sure that what's being constructed is in line with what the site plan said was going to be constructed, and that they're not having to address any potential zoning variances, or more importantly, fire code issues with how close they are to a property line.
Another structure, yeah.
Mhm. And the problem, what we've noticed is sometimes we get to the final inspection and we realize, oh, wow, they did not follow their site plan. And they're, 3 feet from the property line, which would require them to be fire rated, and they've already finished their construction. So to go back and fire rate something is a lot more difficult than if you actually caught it at the foundation survey.
So what recourse do you have if somebody builds a house or commercial building not in accordance with the approved site plan? Is there currently any recourse for you?
Well, that's what the changes in the next section are starting to deal with.
Cause I got a few questions about this too. And the first changes you're making, I totally see where you're coming from there and even experienced it, recently. So, which I'm okay with. And I was totally okay with the way it was handled in my situation, but, I guess, my only comment to that is just to make sure the staff is truly looking at a project by project case to where, somebody's adding a 10-foot addition on the back of their home and they're not doing a tree survey for the property. No trees are going to be impacted.
Understood.
That I'm going to have somebody out there doing a tree survey because those are pretty costly. And that's kind of my main concern with what we're doing with that first section.
Sure.
We're adding, we added our impact, we increased our impact fees a year or so ago, which I was totally in favor of. I was glad to see we did it because it needed to be done. But we've increased our permit fees, and now we're gonna, these become fees essentially when we require them to do a survey.
Yes, sir.
So we're
I
just
understand.
increasing the cost of construction.
Yeah, most of these projects are ones that right now, like I said, are ending up getting the survey
Right. yeah,
after 6
yeah,
months
that's
of
right.
arguing back and forth about what's needed. And so this is really just trying, to make the process more efficient. Yes, a 10-foot addition on the back of a house where you're not expanding any closer to the property line and you've got 50 feet in the back. There's
obvious
no need
situation.
for a survey there.
The second section, I'm not as in favor of, and I'll tell you why. And when we get into construction, the minute we put a shovel on the ground on a construction job, the clock starts ticking until we can get cement in that hole. And so right now we dig a foundation. If it rains a day later, then we redig a foundation. If we dig a foundation and then we get rebar in the hole and then it rains, we pull rebar out, we dig a foundation again, then we put rebar back in while we're waiting on the inspection, building officials and all to come out and do their thing. So it's just kind of in between that, we're also calling in a termite guy that's got to come spray that foundation to make sure they don't get bugs, later on down the line. And no offense to my friend here, but their field is very busy right now and they have a huge backlog. So trying to schedule them into a foundation inspection, we're already waiting, and no offense to Rebecca in the building official's office, but we schedule our inspection and 24 hours later, they're coming to do it. Within 24 hours, they are coming, which is very good, by the way. They're coming to do it, but it is that 24-hour time that's coming before we can pour concrete in the hole. If you kind of see where I'm getting at here, we're adding another step in the process that, and I thought about this pretty hard as an alternative to that, and something that is actually done pretty common. I don't even know if it's required, is surveyors come and hub the corners of the property prior to the first shovel going in the ground. Could we not make, instead of a survey, an actual survey where the surveyor has to go and draw it to scale and get into their CAD files and draw what the foundation is going to look like before we can get approval for the foundation? Could we not get the surveyor to provide a letter that says they came out and hubbed the corners of where that property is going to go prior to batter boards going up and things of that nature? Would that not satisfy the same, what we're trying to, I totally understand what we're trying to prevent here. We're trying to prevent a project from getting built on top of a property line. Or, something that along those lines, especially when you get on a smaller lot, but that may be an alternative that we can chat about to, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, but, or Tina.
I don't know if Rebecca maybe can provide some more. We did discuss it with the building department to try and find out, because she raised the same concerns about how, when they've got that ready, like they need to pour like it. And so I thought we worded it so it didn't actually, like they could go ahead and pour the foundation and then have the survey.
That's
Like
the
you don't
way-
have to
that's the way
wait
I
to
read it,
pour.
actually.
Okay.
You can go ahead and pour the
So you
foundation.
can for the
Yeah,
foundation.
you can pour the foundation. We just won't pass it until we get that survey showing that it's good. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's actually the way I read it as well.
Okay. But then if we have a problem, it's.
It's on you.
Well, it is on us, of course, but it's,
But it's a lot less than having to deal with a whole building that's.
Right.
Yeah, but
yeah,
you
but you're
can't.
still adding a 2 week, probably, I don't know how fast can you guys get.
Well, and
get a
we
survey?
did,
No.
we did put it that it only needs to be done if, for residential properties, if the building's within
10
10 feet
feet,
of the
right.
property line and 15 feet of a property line for commercial
Commercial.
properties, because
That's virtually every property anymore, though.
it is a lot of them, agreed, and not necessarily commercial. A number of them are still some distance away, but yeah, for the smaller residential lots, most of them are definitely within 10 feet, but on a larger lot where the fire code issue isn't going to be
Right.
something you're as concerned about, that we tried to limit. And our thought was most of those smaller lots are done by builders
Right.
who that's all they do.
Mhm.
So they're going to have a surveyor on retainer that can just come out there, be like, we're going to have these lots on this day. We're going to have these lots on this day. We're going to have these. So it won't affect most of the, single builders who are doing, a couple lots here and there. It'll primarily be the tract builders. Those are the ones who generally are dealing with the setbacks that are less than 10 feet from the property line. Which, I mean, not saying that they can afford to wait, but
Right.
they can also afford,
Yeah.
because of economies of scale, they can afford to have a surveyor who comes when they ask them to come.
Mhm.
Because they're giving them enough, they already have ones who do all the site plans, already, because they do have surveyors do their site plans, but, so. I think that was our thought process, but we did try and make the language so that it was to be done at the time of foundation inspection, so you didn't have to wait to have pour your foundation until you got that survey done.
Gotcha.
To prevent that issue with the,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
But
just
but
feel
if
like
there's
it's
any,
I just,
this is not set in stone. This is our first stab at it.
Understood.
So if there's other concerns, I'd be happy to work with y'all before it gets to full council this week to try and see how we can address those concerns adequately.
absolutely.
Well,
Yeah.
as someone who makes a good living doing surveys every day, and we do stake out hundreds of houses a year, but I'm fully on board with you with the site plan. In fact, I thought we were already requiring that.
Most people think we are.
And we need to require that. However, in the hundreds of houses and buildings I've staked, I've never come back and done a foundation survey and found it was off by more than an inch at most. So I'm all in favor of a site plan. I'm not really feeling the foundation survey or the as-built survey. If perhaps you want us just to forward the recommendation that we just approved a site plan, I'm fine with that. Or if you want to take another stab at the problem is, and I think my company moves quicker than most, but it still takes us 2 or 3 weeks to get to a job. Unless you happen to be that guy who's building 500 houses a year, and then you go to the top of my list, but, my goal is to make whole permitting and approval process easier, not harder. And so I'm less inclined to add additional steps and layers to our current process. But a site plan, that's
No, I agree. 100%.
That's a given. That's basic.
I-
So-
No problem with that whatsoever.
Yeah, I guess, part of our thought process on the as-built as well is once you have that as-built survey, then anytime you want to do an addition, expansion, anything else,
Sorry.
you have your as-built survey.
Yeah, well, they
So
can
you
do
just
it.
add on to
that
that.
time.
But I guess you could say you'd have your survey, your site plan from the initial building that should hopefully be accurate.
It's supposed to match up.
It's supposed to be accurate.
I don't want to add an ordinance to protect dumb contractors from themselves.
Well, unfortunately, we see a lot of them lately.
Okay, then,
I can see it.
then
I
they should
mean, and
pay the
it's-
price to move.
And I don't know
Oh,
whether
hey,
it's
look at
the
me, so I'm-
contractors or whether it's the property owners just telling them, well, this is what I really wanted to do. So can you do that? And They
Yeah.
wouldn't let me. I don't know. But we've just seen a lot of these issues, particularly that, in the last year. We've
If you
seen a
want
lot of
to,
issues with.
you want to rewrite this to yes, require a site plan, but didn't have a mechanism where it's obvious they didn't build it according to the site plan, then you require them to get it. I would be all in favor of that, but just as a normal course of doing business, every house has to have a foundation, every house has to have an as-built. I'm not on board with that.
It just don't we have staff that goes out and does the final, like the fall inspection, at the end before CO? They go out and do the grading inspection, more of a visual that through Bonnie, right? Yeah.
So yeah, Dale
Yeah,
does
so
a
Dale does,
grading,
yeah.
grading inspection. Building department obviously does the building
Right.
inspection, and if trees were required to be planted, then
Then you guys are.
arborist does
Yeah.
the tree inspection.
I would think, when Dale's doing his final, if he'd almost be able to put a visual on it to see, if he's got a site plan with him to say, oh, no, they're, once again, we're talking about obvious, offs here where somebody took a step, a set of stairs and moved them 35 feet further out than from the house and what was, if they have
Well, no,
17 steps
I
instead of
will
4
say,
steps.
admittedly, a lot of the issues we're seeing aren't necessarily the building
Right. it's
being
just-
moved per se, but it's additional concrete being added. Which increase, for properties that are already close to their impervious surface, that's part of that as-built to make sure that what they put in
Yep.
is actually, meets the impervious surface requirement. Because everybody's like, oh, well, it's just, a couple percentage points. We're like, yeah, but if everybody goes over a couple percentage points, then your drainage doesn't have a chance of working.
And-
Your drainage plan.
To that effect, I would just assuming Dale could, he's got a site plan when he goes out there to look at the site. He know whether or not somebody added 25 feet of,
Right.
concrete.
And what we're ending up doing is making them do a as-built survey.
right? Then make them do after.
That's what we're making them do.
Yeah.
We're telling them they have to do an as-built survey.
Is that what y'all do
So,
now?
yeah,
Okay.
when they've added additional impervious surface, we make them do an as-built survey, but it's taking like something that should just, well, what says I have to do that? Well, we're saying you have to do it because we don't know whether you're now meeting your impervious.
So could we
Um,
just make that verbiage? to the ordinance?
As I said, we can work on the verbiage to address the issues that we're having. Like if additional impervious surface is discovered, an as-built survey is required. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, we can certainly,
So I guess my question is, do you want us to push a motion forward just requiring a site plan? Or do you want to make another attempt at this particular section of the ordinance?
Just for section F as a whole, as far as agenda purposes, do you want to take another stab at verbiage for F and then get back to us and then? Or, even now, between now and the council meeting,
I was
don't
gonna
think
say,
there's
yeah, I
any
mean,
sense in
if you're willing to move it forward without a recommendation and I can
work on
work
verbiage
on
between
the
now and-
verbiage for the rest of it, and then y'all can make your final decision at council.
Okay.
That sounds good.
Yeah, I'm okay with that as well.
I'm okay with that as well.
Okay.
This is your motion.
Okay.
Because you actually understand what she said.
I'll make a motion that we forward to the full council an amendment to the Unified Development Ordinance, Chapter 13, Section 13, without a recommendation.
I'll second.
That motion is second, and we discussed quite a bit, so just call for the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And the final item on the agenda is proposed amendments to the Somerville Unified Development Ordinance, Chapter 14, Section 14.2.4, notice of violation, and 14.2.5, failure to correct violation. Planning Commission held a public hearing, made a recommendation for approval at their meeting on April 15th, 2024. As I alluded to in the previous discussion, this is trying to address issues we've had moving forward with code enforcement of violations. There are certain times when a warning notice is a moot point. If you've cut down a tree without a permit, not much point requiring a warning notice before issuing a citation, or not even a citation. I apologize. We didn't even have the correct wording for what it's called, but a uniform municipal summons. And also requiring it be done by certified letter. We're finding that we're spending a lot of money on certified letters that get returned to us 9 months later as undeliverable. This is, according to our legal counsel, warning is not a state requirement before issuing a uniform municipal summons. And so we're making it so that we don't have to, obviously, in situations where someone's done something without a permit that's not, needed to be approved, we will still issue a warning and give them a chance to come into compliance before moving
Understood.
forward. Just,
I don't think you have to oversell it.
yeah,
Yeah.
Okay,
I-
all
yeah,
right.
I think you got this one, Jess.
Yeah,
got it.
this one's easy.
Yeah, we were okay with this one.
Okay.
I'll hear a motion.
Go ahead, Matt.
I'll make a motion that we push forward to full council an amendment to Unified Development Ordinance, Chapter 14, Section 14.
I'll second.
Motion a second, no discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'll hear a motion.
I make a-
You want to talk about anything else?
I do not have
Okay.
anything else. Thank you.
Thank you, Jesse, too. I do
very
want to thank
much.
you. We appreciate all the information too. I know this is a little tougher than normal and but do appreciate
Well,
you entertaining the
um,
questions.
I appreciate y'all working with me on, I knew that chapter was gonna be
Yeah.
a tough one, so I appreciate y'all giving us the opportunity to look at it further.
Make a motion, we adjourn.
I'll second that.
All right, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
We're adjourned.
Chiefs and Chief, give me a chance to say a few words before you get started, Doug.
You want me to say something?
No, I need to say something.
Oh, yes, sir.
Yeah, okay. All right, I'll call the public safety meeting to order. And I'm going to read something I think you'll enjoy. Public safety training. Training of public safety personnel is very important to the welfare of the community that they serve and the welfare and longevity of those who serve in public safety as well. No town, city, or community can be safe and secure without a good public safety domain. In the words of the great basketball star Charles Barkley, who quelled a riot against law enforcement in Atlanta, Georgia, by stating so wisely, in quotes, "We need the police." The residents of Somerville consistently show their gratitude by letters, email, comments that praise the exemplary works of the police department and fire and rescue over the years. The civility, peace, and tranquility that have existed in the town of Somerville for many years is due largely to the training of our public safety and exceptional leadership of each department. I ask the town of Somerville to continue to fund training beyond the academic basics. Now it's your turn, Doug.
Well, first of all, I think that's the most eloquent thing I've ever heard you say, sir. So we thank you for that and appreciate your support. We're going to go out of order. I think based off of what you just said, we'll go to subsection B first. That's okay. So training has been the hallmark of our agency since I came here. Our training budget has always been very small as compared to other entities around us, but we've made do with what we have. Mostly because of internal in-house trainers and instructors that we have on hand that we've sent off to become somewhat of subject matter experts and have grown into subject matter experts. We've been very proactive when it comes to de-escalation training. We've sent all of our police officers through crisis intervention team training, which is, we're actually hosting it this week, and we have the Department of Mental Health here. We actually have deputies from other agencies that are here as well from Charleston, as well as our officers. So everybody who comes here is certified and retrained in that every year for de-escalation, as well as if we ever have to, what we go consider hands-on type situations, we've always used what's called PPCT, which is pressure point control tactics. That art is still very much alive in law enforcement. However, I have a very extensive background in grappling from my childhood up through high school. And up to the time I was a ground defense tactics instructor for the police department here, which I put great value on grappling as well as mixed martial arts or jujitsu, Brazilian jiu-jitsu. So when I became the chief April of 2021, I reached out to Dwight Decker from Black Force MMA, which is mixed martial arts. I have him here with me today. He's a subject matter expert, and I'm having him up in just a moment. In 2021, I wanted to change the pressure point control training to go to a more of a grappling style of de-escalation, and to also train our officers mentally and physically on how to de-escalate situations. So we have something that's called the Abangada hijack, which is where your frontal cortex of your brain, when you're involved in a serious stressful situation, can get out of control. What this type of training actually teaches us is self-discipline, teaches our officers to learn to de-escalate and calm the situation instead of escalate it as the situation evolves. And part of that includes the fact that if you are properly trained in this training, which I will make sure that I tell you and counsel who's here, that mixed martial arts obviously has a lethality to it. We do not use any lethal force type moves, locks, or chokes. It is strictly adhered to and taught by law enforcement and also their experts. So with that being said, it has been determined through different surveys that anywhere between 48 and 53% of both law enforcement officers and violators who would be the offender, that their injuries are down when using this type of training properly, 48 to 53%. So in 2021, April, I came in, took over on July 1st when our budget year started. I brought in Dwight Decker. So I'm gonna have Dwight come up just for a moment and just tell you he's a fine man. He's a U.S. Navy veteran. I thank him for his service. He's also an expert in mixed martial arts and grappling. He's a member of the National Hall of Fame for mixed martial arts. And he has a dojo here in the Somerville area. And he's been very gracious to our agency, allowing for us to be trained at a minimal cost, which I know for a fact that he can make a lot of money off of us, and he's chosen not to. But before I bring him up, I want to tell you this. When we instituted this training for our police officers in July of 2021, as I know it, we're the only police agency in South Carolina who was doing it. We contacted the Criminal Justice Academy and made sure that their legal was okay with it. It was my understanding they didn't have anybody who could really tell us otherwise other than Mr. Parker. So they put it back to our legal staff. As of today, since July of 2021, when I started it, I'm proud to announce the South Carolina Criminal Justice Academy is moving more towards this type of training and away from a lot of the other things that have been taught over the years, because they're seeing the success that it's continuing to have. So Dwight's coming up here right now. He's a former police officer from Ohio, and I'd just like to hear him speak for a minute. I did not coach him, so whatever he says is on him.
It's quite a disclaimer. How you doing? Dwight Decker. So, like Chief said, I've been training the Somerville Police Department for their block training and self-defense, hand-to-hand de-escalation, weapons retention. I have a lot of experience in this realm. Like Chief said, I was a police officer. I also did 5 years undercover narcotics. I was on the SWAT team. I actually trained our SWAT team in hand-to-hand combat, de-escalation, hostage situations. So I know a lot of the stresses that the police officers are under. One of the things that I tell the police officers when they come in to get the training, even though they're not armed, remember every fight that you're in, there's always one gun involved and it's yours. So that's an added stress that these police officers are under. So when we're teaching them and training them, I ask them what hand they are. Typically, most of them are right-handed. Then we pair that side of the weapon. So we blade the weapon against it, so it's not their first reaction to grab that weapon. Different scenarios we've ran with the police officers. We put them in high stress situations. We have music blaring, we're yelling, or we're just calm, and then things go sideways real quick, just like they would on the street. We've had everything from the SWAT, the traffic control unit, everybody in the police department pretty much has come through our training. They've done really, really well, outstanding. From everything that I've been told from the police officers, they absolutely love it. Every time they've used what we've trained them, they come out unscathed. They're just like, you know, which brings also workman's comp down, liability down. You know, we really go above and beyond what is meant for an officer, you know, and just having that experience on my end. We have a lot of military police that train at my academy. They're instructors at my academy. As far as police officers as well, that former police officers were in there. So we have them training as well. We even went as far as bringing kids in to the SROs. So when they're in the school system and stuff, our kids are trained. My son was here. He's had over 8 MMA fights. He's 14. We've had 17, 14, 10, and 9, and a 12-year-old in there with the SROs. And I said, look, here's the situation. These kids, you don't know who they are. I just brought them in. Here's the situation. And the training that they got from us was just unbelievable. They were able to de-escalate the situation with the kids and with the adults and take control of the situation without doing any sort of harm to the person. So that's, I mean, it has really benefited what we're doing with the police department. Do you guys have any questions?
Your training is designed to protect the public as well as the police officers you're training, correct? With your emphasis on protecting the residents, just ordinary people, right?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear the last part. I'm sorry.
Your training is to protect the public
Yes, sir.
and also to protect the officers
Yes, sir.
so that they don't do something that's totally unnecessary.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I do carry a master's degree in forensic psychology. So I talk the officer through different mental aspects of what we're doing and how to de-escalate that. When to, like, obviously when, you know, stuff goes sideways, people forget the number one thing, breathing. Their adrenaline's going. We like to call it quicksand. What that means is you feel like you're moving real slow, and that's the adrenaline dump. So what we do while we're training the officer, we're reminding them, breathe, because a lot of the times when you're not breathing, you get this tunnel vision. So everything starts going up, your heart rate starts going up, your blood pressure starts going up. So when you're taking that deep breath, you're in control of the situation. We actually teach the officer to take a step back and keep their hands up. So that de-escalation right there is not agitating the person that they're trying to arrest or come after.
Well, thank you very much for giving our officers another tool in their toolbox so they don't have to reach for that gun or a taser.
Absolutely. And when I talked to the chief, that was one of the biggest things that, you know, we wanted to get out. Most of these people, and this goes for law enforcement across the board, most of these people have never been in a situation where they've had a gun or where they've had a taser, where they've had pepper spray, and then we're throwing them into this situation. So when something does happen, that fight or flight mechanism comes in, and the first thing they do is grab that gun. We give them extra tools in their toolbox. I like to call it, everybody has a toolbox at home. Everything in that top shelf, you use about 90% of the time, okay? That bottom section, maybe 10, 15%, or it looks shiny and nice and you keep it in there. But we give them more tools to put on that top shelf so they can look at other things on the bottom shelf later and not resort to them right away.
Do you find that this training is as effective when there's a large disparity in the size of the two individuals?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, anybody in this room couldn't put handcuffs on me in 5 minutes. I mean, and I'm the smallest one in here. I mean, it's unbelievable, but that's the thing. We give them tools to do that. And if you have ever watched jujitsu or know anything about jujitsu and judo, it's the gentle art. We've had women on the police force that are smaller than me and they manhandle me.
Okay. Well, I'm glad you're on our side.
Yes, sir. Any other questions?
Not about that.
Doug, will you get your handcuffs out and try to? See a difference.
I'm a good guy, I promise.
Thank you. Can you also, thank you very much.
Oh, yes.
So that's, that's de-escalation through physical means. Can you talk a little bit about the training and de-escalation through verbally?
Right. So we talk about, it's been referred to as verbal judo in the past. Basically, you de-escalate with your voice, your tone, your inflection, the words you use, the way your body, your kinetics of your body, the way you stand, your posture. So a lot of that is taught in the CIT training. There are times when officers may or may not use that properly, and we make sure that we follow up with that on all use of forces in the Somerville Police Department that meet the criteria for use of force. We complete use of force reviews. That includes the in-car video, the mobile video from the officer, as well as other officers who were there. And it goes all the way up through the chain of command to include the training unit, as well as the Office of Professional Standards, which is internal affairs, all the way up to the deputy chief or myself, and we sign off on it. So there's always learning aspects there where you didn't use excessive use of force, but you may have not properly engaged somebody in a verbal conversation that you should have handled a little bit differently. That could have escalated that situation, right? But you know, we teach our police officers in South Carolina and all law enforcement, you meet escalation with one level of escalation higher than the person you're meeting. So you don't meet at the same level, you come in one escalation higher than them, whether that be verbal, or whether that be display, you know, nonverbal, whatnot. Does that answer your question, sir?
It does. And I think there's as much to be learned when it's done improperly as there is when it's done properly. Is there a mechanism to review body cam video when a situation goes sideways?
Yes, sir. So that's the use of force that we put for through the entire process. And so it's you reviewed immediately by the supervisors, the frontline supervisors who's reading the report the day. We have to have it complete, usually within 24 hours of the incident. That way it can make its way up through the chain of command. And then it goes through different levels where everybody sees it. So everybody who's in that group will see, and they'll all have their own take on it. And we've had situations where they've been overruled, whereas it came up through, and this is the same for pursuit reviews, where it came up through the chain of command that there maybe did something incorrectly or something correctly. And someone who has a little bit more experience or has a different perspective will bring that level of experience and training to that particular situation and change that review. And then if it's improper use of force, it's reported to the South Carolina Criminal Justice Academy as by law, and that's put into a national database that's recovered or kept with the FBI.
Very good.
One last thing, if I can, about training. Our training budget this year was depleted by January. So we had 6 months of no training. We've been using drug funds. I do want to thank all of the council for being forward thinkers. Over the past 3 years, I've been the chief. They have increased that budget even with COVID. We saw an increase at some level, but this year we've asked for more, and we're going to continue to ask for more for training because you can never get enough of it. It's the first thing that we get attacked for in any type of civil or criminal liability, as you all know. And this year we have not had the luxury of having Mr. Decker train our officers, so we're hoping to get that back rolling after the July fiscal budget. We do have block training, and just so everybody understands, every police officer in Somerville has to go through a 40-hour week of training every year. So that consists of whatever we're doing that year, whether that be the taser deployment for recertification, ASP baton, which are the expandable batons on our sides, our weapons requal. It could be CPR. It could be the defibrillator. It could be mixed martial arts. We just onboarded new handguns for all the officers we bought with drug money. So they're all having to be certified. We did go one step outside of our comfort zone, and we started with live fire training range that we've been going to. And that's shown a lot of improvement for our officers with decision-making and using their weapons. So.
Great. Thank you, Chief.
Sorry, it wasn't as difficult as Jesse. Where you at, Jesse? Oh, you took our sweater off. Okay. I know. I'll look for the pink sweaters. Any questions about training?
No, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Dwight, for coming.
Thank you.
I'll move back to subsection A for discussion of decimal meters by the police department. Would you like to open with a statement, Councilman?
Proceed.
Okay. I'm sure you were going to say that. So just a little bit of history. This is always been a matter of contention for law enforcement. If you look at the other municipalities around anywhere in the country, noise as a historical factor has always been an issue with law enforcement. And I say law enforcement, the community, with bringing their complaints to their public officials. And as we continue to grow and become more populated, there's more vehicles, there's more people, there's more noise, there's less trees to absorb that density for the ambient sound and noise. And that's not by design. So in 2015, the previous council had amended an ordinance for the noise to go away from the discretion of law enforcement to the use of decibel meters. I was not the chief then. I was not even thought of being the chief then. But that technology costs money. And it's my understanding that council at the time bought 4 decibel meters for the police department for everybody to use. I came back to council when I became the chief in 2021. We ended up discussing it in 2022 to remove the use of the decibel meter just because of, well, many factors. The biggest factor being, one, the cost of the decibel meter for everybody to have one. 2 was being in the right place at the right time. As a lot of people can imagine, if I only have 4 decibel meters and I have a car next to me at a red light that's shaking my mirrors and everything around me, I have to have the decibel meter to make that charge. So there was a lot of different factors that were factored in as to why I felt we needed to go back to what I considered a common sense approach to allowing police officers to make the decision with their discretion. So obviously we have body worn cameras, we have in-car cameras, and I tried to have, even though it's done in our ordinance, either of the ordinances, we don't have to warn anybody before we cite them. We feel that it needs to be a warning that's given. That's the way we operate, and a written warning. Then they have 24 hours from that point of time for the ABATE to change the noise. And if they don't, they could be cited with a citation. So I'll give you some backstory there. I do have a decibel meter here. If anybody would like for me to explain it to them, I could do that. What questions do you have?
So we are not presently using that as a requirement in responding to a noise complaint.
That's correct, sir.
Okay, so it's completely at the discretion of the officer responding.
Yes, sir.
Okay. I know there's been a lot of discussion lately, particularly in areas where there's commercial next to residential.
Mhm.
I think there's a specific situation on Gulf Road. Can you speak to that a little bit specifically?
I can't speak on Gulf Road, but what I can speak on is certainly Central Avenue and the S curves. And I think former Councilman Jenkins, we dealt with that for a long time and continue to. I think it's Mr. Tiffany's, Councilwoman's district now in that area. And basically the trees cover the road. So it makes somewhat of a it's a tunnel types effect. And because you have raised bricking that's about 1.5 feet, 2 foot up, if a motorcycle or car goes through that area, that's maybe has a loud muffler or loud truck or bus. So when it's accelerating, that amplifies the noise and it just kind of makes a sound tunnel down through that area. That's one area I could think of right now. I think we discussed it just prior to you coming on, sir, but I know you're aware of it because where you live. The noise along the Summer Branch Bike Path, as well as the canal, as well as where they're building at, because of how when they took that foliage away from your frontage road or from the road, the blocking mechanism, that became a serious source of contention for everybody, all the residents along there, along T Farm. And I got a call one night, I think it was from now Councilman Waring, about hearing about a shooting going on in the town. And what it was someone was firing gunshots down near Bud Knight's house on the other end of 17A, but it echoed all the way down the canal. And we started getting 911 calls about gunfire, and it wasn't even in the town. So I say all that to you to say it can be very difficult to enforce this law with the decibel reader, only because I feel that based off what I've seen, and I'm willing to show any of you that would like to see it, how this just standing on the side of the road, 25 yards off the roadway, a car passing by based off the prior ordinance for decimals is in violation of that particular ordinance that we had prior to 2022.
Is there a mechanism to document each time there's a complaint? Because if you have multiple shifts, multiple days, multiple officers responding to a complaint.
Yes, sir. So all of our cars have CAD, which is computer automated dispatch. We have an offgoing shift log. So every time a police officer comes in for their duty shift at 5:45 a.m. or 5:45 p.m., that book is read to them. And if it's the same officer working the 2-day span and they've been warned, they know that going back there, the dispatcher could tell them, or they can actually look at the address in the computer and they can see they've already been to this location. It's been less than 24 hours. They had a written warning that was issued, or they had a citation that was issued. And so that is done. I just think that there are a lot of factors involved, but yes, we do have the ability to see that. And the noise complaints are very many. We have a lot of them. The other thing I was going to talk about is, and again, I'm not trying, this council can vote however they want, and we're going to enforce the law however you all see fit. I'm just telling you from a enforcement perspective, how difficult this could be, based off of everything we have going on with the growth and everything in the town, is just the ability to enforce that and have to bring that noise meter or the decimal meter in for every court hearing, make sure it's calibrated. Obviously there's going to be defenses for the decimal reader, and there's going to be some if you don't have a decimal reader. It's just a matter of how you look at it. But I think common sense would play into this, and I'll give you a good example. Sunday afternoon, you're having a graduation party. You've got 10, 15 people over in your backyard. You're cooking, barbecuing on the grill. You got a little bit of music playing. Someone calls. If I stand on the roadway with that decimal reader and it's in violation of that time or what that is, obviously it's the same as if I walked up and said, "Can you please turn it down?" And so we would walk up and tell them to please turn it down. Then the same would go as if we showed up for a second time. Most people we've dealt with, they have no problem with complying with us showing up at their house. They don't want the police showing up there. They certainly don't want to see and be embarrassed in front of their guests. But they, as most people think, they don't realize they're in violation of the noise ordinance until somebody tells them. And then usually they don't think they were in violation of the noise ordinance. And so we don't want to cite people just because we can, but we certainly want to give them the benefit of the doubt to turn it down.
Any other questions?
So how much did we pay for those, back when we bought
This
them?
particular one, I believe, is $300. They may range and be less expensive. I do have a video that I could show if you like. If you don't, you can watch it in your own free time, but we made a little video for you just for laymen that don't understand the decimal reader. I think it's important because this is an important decision that's council has before them, that within 10 years, we're going to be going back again to looking at changing another ordinance that's the same ordinance back to something else. Again, it's up to you if you'd like to see it or not.
How long was the video?
3 minutes.
I haven't seen it. We could probably put up another 3 minutes, but we were,
I think it'd be helpful for, some of the people that are watching from home or, that are
Okay.
new to
Well,
know.
obviously there could be conjecture. This is just an ordinary day, with if you had a decimal meter, if you wanted to use it to your benefit to cite people for loud noise. And I just, for contextual purposes, I think it's important for you all to understand, what this tool can and cannot do versus a police officer who can do the same thing that has it documented by recording. So obviously you've got to turn around to watch the video, or you can stand up and watch it, but
well, you got 2.5 minutes left. Go ahead.
well, I want to make sure you understand where I'm coming from. I'm at your mercy. So whatever y'all choose to do. Beth? What's the threshold in the previous one? 60 in the daytime residential and 80 in the business district right there in the daytime. Could it be as simple as increasing the limits? So, could you just simply jack up the limits of what is specific to that? Thank you, Beth. So certainly if council would deem there being decimal meters, it's recommended that that decibel reading be raised and understand that it's probably going to cost about $24,000 for 80 of those that will have to be kept with each officer to make that charge. And certainly we will do that if that's what council deems necessary.
Well, it's a good device that can help the public to understand what you're doing to make them safer as opposed to trying to write them a ticket.
I will say that I was on council back when we bought those. And we had all intention of good meaning. And I think the biggest violation back then was just the large trucks traveling down Main Street in some of the community areas and cars that had their boom boxes really, really loud. That was one of the main things. And we had good intention. And then when you guys came back to us, a few years later and said, actually, I think they spoke of like what Mount Pleasant was doing, and all of them ended up going back to the call that we did because we just you couldn't enforce it and it wasn't really doing anything.
I think everybody has good intentions on council at all times. I don't think anybody has nefarious purposes or ideas to do things. Certainly I've given you what information I can give you. Certainly you could raise that bar if you'd like. You listen to your constituents and you make your decision based off of that. So.
How many of these, I don't want to belabor the point, but how many of these actually end up in court? And how do you prosecute that without some numerical?
In most cases, people will come pay the fine. It's very rare that I know of that they show up and contest it. I know there's been no jury trials for it. I think that a lot of times the police officers show a lot of restraint when they get to these situations. There are times where we'll have a live band over at one of the local breweries nearby, and we've had to cite them. But we've been able to work through those with a lot of it. The biggest thing is education. Obviously, we don't want to put fines and levy fines on people if we don't have to, but we certainly want them to learn a lesson. So what one band may do might not be what the next band does the next night, but it's on the onus is on the owner of that property to make sure that it's upheld. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug.
Hey there, we're going to talk a little bit more about training. As far as public safety goes, I don't think, I don't want to sound morbid. And when it comes to public safety, you can't train enough for a job that can kill you. We're constantly training. We spend absolutely every bit of the money that we get for training. And we usually have to try to spread it out throughout the year, but on average, our department-wide spends about 3,000 hours a month training. So that's, and then that's on average. Our minimums for members of the department, each member is 20 hours a month. They far exceed that. So that's on average, I would say they go 4 to 6 hours every shift of training. So training is what we do. We spend 99% of our time training for the 1% of the amount of calls that we go on. And that's not for just us, it's for the citizens that we serve. So we have a very high standard. If someone doesn't make their training hours, we're on top of them and say, hey, what was the reason why you didn't make your training hours? And we'll even ask them to make it up for the next month. Sometimes there are extenuating circumstances where they're out sick leave or something like that. Yeah, that's understandable. But for the most part, by the end of the year, they've met and far exceeded their hours for training. We have so many disciplines that we do as a fire department, from high angle rescue to water rescue and just about everything else that we get called out for. So we can't stop training. We're going to provide the best service that we possibly can to be as self-sufficient as we can. We can't stop training. It's what we do. It's ingrained in us each and every day. So it's important to us because it's important to the citizens.
Well, I think for any individual, whether it's fire or police or whatever, if they're, the better they're trained, I think the more confidence they have that they can get the job done.
Absolutely.
And that's what really protects the public. And that's what I want you to emphasize. If they're trained well, they're cut above the crowd, they'll do a better choice. They make better decisions for the public and for themselves.
And just today, we had a mother and child come by the station. And it was just myself and Miss Ella and one of the other chiefs that were there. And the little boy wanted to see the fire trucks where everybody was at training at that time. So they ended up coming back. And when we got outside and she commented on, she goes, how often do you guys train? I was like, it's nonstop. Well, we're constantly training. So we stress the importance of training nonstop. So you guys have any questions or comments?
That's the result that we're looking for. And I think, like I said in my little missive, I think it's very important that we continue to provide the funds for training, because that makes for the better personnel. It protects the public. And that is what Somerville is all about. Peace and tranquility, having a great feeling about living here in Somerville, that they're going to be safe and that the police department, the fire department, rescue department is going to take care of them. So that's why I wanted to emphasize that. I appreciate what you guys are doing.
Absolutely. Thank you.
I will say, as a graduate of the Fire
Absolutely.
Citizen Academy, one of the things that we got to see was training one evening. It was really great. And for those of you that don't know, it's just not our Somerville Fire Department that was out there. We actually use our facility and we let other companies come in, right, from other places. And there was another truck or two that were there from somewhere else that evening. But I got to see the training with my eyes and I was very, very impressed. And also I did get to use the jaws of life. So I just wanted to
Nice.
say that.
Certified. Not everybody gets to do that. By the way.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. No other questions or a call for adjournment?
Yeah, I'd make a motion that we adjourn.
Second. Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, our last committee meeting tonight. Well, besides finance.
Sorry, everybody. Sorry. Sorry.
Richard, don't sit down. You're on this committee.
I got lost.
Now I don't feel so bad for my first
Yeah.
meeting.
I'm so out of sorts.
Okay, now we're ready.
Ready, all right. Thank y'all. The first item on the agenda is a stop sign and crosswalk request at Dolphin Drive and Goldfinch Lane in the Arbor Walk subdivision. So, I don't know if y'all can see that there. I also printed out the location. Oh, okay. Right. I've had conversations with the HOA. They are concerned about the speeding that's going on. And, you know, I say stop signs are not used for speeding. And I got the police department. They did a stealth stat report. They were out there for 4 days at the end of February. And, based on the numbers that came back, you know, it's put incognito up on a pole to, you know, count the cars and the speed that they're going. And, the average speed was 22 miles an hour, which is below the 25. So still they are requesting one. I said the next step would be, you know, to bring it to council.
And this is their HOA that's come to you?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. I did ask them to talk to the folks that live right there just to make sure. And I was told that they are in support of it.
And so they want a three-way stop or?
It's a three-way stop. Of course, the traffic from Goldfinch, they stop, but then Dolphin Drive, I understand they're, maybe folks living in Newington or in Marlin Estates might be coming through there and, just the increase in traffic and speeding is a concern for them.
And we own this road.
Yes.
We do. Yes, ma'am.
And this is also, this is in the neighborhood. So what about the list of all the other crosswalks that I've submitted or other council members have submitted to have done in the town that would affect the whole town rather than just the neighborhood?
I think
Right.
this is just a stop sign, right?
Well,
It's
no,
stop
it says
sign and
crosswalk.
Oh,
Right, because with that becoming a stop condition, they only have a sidewalk on one side of the road and it's on the opposite side of where Goldfinch is. And they would like a crosswalk put in if the stop sign gets approved.
I see. So they would want this,
Mhm.
well, we would decide where exactly would go, but.
Yeah, I know exactly where this is at. I own a rental property on Goldfinch, but if this was approved, how would that affect all the other crosswalks that have been submitted or stop signs for that matter as
Right,
well?
stop signs are, it's fairly easy to put up if they're on, you know, town maintained roads. The crosswalks and refreshing of the striping, a lot of the requests that I've gotten are on DOT roads. So I'm in conversation with DOT because it is a lot of money and they don't mind, but then it's, do we want to spend our limited funds and resources on DOT roads when it is their roads? And just wondering if we can come up with some kind of agreement with them that if we do, you know, financially, you know, I don't know, they pay for it, we do the work. But I'm just in the early stages of that.
I'm not that familiar with this area. I mean, I know where it is, but as far as whether there's a problem there or not, can we, this is your district, right?
Right.
And you haven't any,
I do go that way and, I mean, I think it's great that, the average speed was only like 22, 23, and the
Mhm.
speed limit is 25. I know a lot of neighborhoods come to us that they want those extra stop signs in there, and it doesn't seem that it's warranted. I don't know what's your thought.
I like Bonnie's suggestion. I think if they pay for it and we install it, I think that's fine.
But that is a town road.
town road.
Yeah,
But the
it's a town road.
HOA can still pay for that, couldn't they?
Oh, I thought we were talking about DOT
me too.
roads.
Oh.
And the striping on DOT roads. I guess with the HOA, we would do that since it is ours.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Mhm.
I personally wouldn't. Oh, go ahead.
Did y'all have, did you have a recommendation? And didn't see the notes, no
I-
recommendation for
no-
staff?
no
Without having, and don't we have parameters that have to be met before we start putting in the stop signs? That seemed like at one time, I know we did for the speed humps. I don't want to say that too loud. but-
Right, right. And
Yeah.
speed humps would be
Yeah.
another
and
possibility.
Those are
but
HOA
then
required to do that, but
yes, that is something
Yeah.
that the HOA would have to pay for. And, but then we're seeing the damage to cars sometimes.
yeah, I just
We're
know
getting
we-
away from the speed
Yeah,
bumps.
I'm not a fan either. If we, and I guess my only concern with it is, we start, I think like Kim was saying, we start putting up stop signs, we're putting, stop signs everywhere we
Right, it
turn around,
becomes
so.
stop sign.
Yeah,
right.
everybody gets a stop sign.
Right.
But it's,
Right.
I don't have a problem moving this to full council with, and just allow some more time to look it over between now and then, have it moving to council without a recommendation.
I agree. I think that's what we should do at this
Mm.
point.
Okay.
I mean, I'm not in objection of it,
Right.
but I'd like to send to full council.
Yeah.
Is
I'll
there a
make-
motion?
That's a motion.
Okay, I'll second.
Okay, all in favor of moving it to full council?
Aye.
All right. All right.
The next item is the CTC roadway resurfacing list. Just a general discussion. What we have so far is this list. I have separated it into the asphalt roads. And then also there are some concrete roads. We have about 23 concrete roads that are in the town that are town roads. And it's just, the maintenance of concrete is just a lot more expensive. And so, eventually, want to get them all asphalt. But then that is more expensive. So when we go to CTC for funding requests, if it's a concrete to asphalt, that takes up a big chunk. So we can only do a little bit at a time.
Meaning
Whereas,
the concrete's more expensive, right?
right, well, they have to, rip it up and do the base and let it sit and then come back and pave the asphalt. It's just a more expensive process than just generally milling and resurfacing.
Right. Well, I remember the last time we went into Gahagan, it's been several years ago now, but it was quite costly
Yeah.
because we did several roads in there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that was about 10 years ago
Yeah.
as well. There was some in Pine Forest and in Gahagan. And yeah, we just haven't done any concrete roads since then.
Yeah.
Do you know right off how much we receive in CTC funding?
The past few years, it's been over $1 million. We've come once a year and had a lot of roads. It's just one big, big contract with several roads. Yeah. So, I mean, I could do the same. I didn't know if y'all had any request for any roadway resurfacing. As I was looking through it, seems like, it'd be nice to get several that were in a neighborhood, and not just move around.
What y'all use for a determination? Do y'all have I know we used to have a grading.
Right,
Do you
right.
have which I'm sure all
Most
are
of
failing.
these, yeah, most of these were just from just our observation, just going out and being like, man, this,
Yeah, that's
it's been a while. or residents that call and request, people that live on the road, you know, they'll.
I have a couple I'd like to add to this list as well for either this year or next year. I don't have the exact with me right now. I've got it on my
Okay.
iPad. Can I email
Oh,
them?
sure. Yeah, and then if y'all or any other members of council, you know, have any, just let me know and I'll keep adding them to the list.
All right, thank you.
And so is this list, is this pretty much what we're going with right now, or do we approve this as a council body? And forgive my,
See, I wasn't sure either. I know we had discussed it some at
Mhm.
budget retreat and just to make y'all aware and
Where you
council
are.
aware of, you know, the different roads that we're thinking about resurfacing.
I would
And it-
approve the list before. Do you know, Lisa? It's just, y'all just going to
So
work,
it's
right?
just-
I just said.
Okay. Yeah, and then we can still throw them at you, I guess, as time marches on. In the meantime,
Right.
Okay.
We just add more and, you know, I plan to let y'all know what the new ones are and.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Perfect.
And we already have this funding to begin this.
We do not. I have not gone to the CTC yet with a formal request. So I don't know how much is available. I'm new to that, but
That's what I was gonna ask. Do we know what this cost would even be yet?
we have got a
Rough estimate.
preliminary, yes, we have some of them, some of the roads we've got an estimate for, but it's just knowing, you know,
Mhm.
all of it, especially if, you know, we can do all of these. This is a little over 8 miles total.
And are these in priority listing right now?
It is
Oh,
not. It's just
okay.
listed by the subdivision in alphabetical order.
Senator Sin mentioned to me that she thinks CTC funding could be used for sidewalks. Is that something you can confirm when you go to a meeting?
Yes, I will.
Can that be confirmed before we spend any of that money when we get it? I don't,
I will try to. I know a meeting, it's the second Tuesday of the month. So I'm not sure if that's tomorrow or the next week, but that's the next CTC meeting. So I'll know the next week or so.
thank you.
All right. All right. And then the last item is a sidewalk priority list discussion. What you have is what was prepared by the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee. Most of these are again on state roads. So it's, you know, just the issue of spending, or at least for the crosswalks, spending, you know, the town money to improve the state roads. I know they are also meeting this month and we'll discuss it further, and it's a living, you know,
Okay.
list of the priorities. I know we have Central Avenue Sidewalk Phase 1 that is out,
Mhm.
that is currently being advertised for bid. And then hopefully Lee Street will be next for the sidewalks.
Do we need to redraw? Did we have to re-permit that one? We did, right?
We already
did it in
Oh, Okay,
extension.
it's, okay, we already got
Oh,
extension.
mhm.
Okay,
Oh,
good.
good.
Even better.
That's
So we didn't have to resubmit plans or anything then?
No,
Oh, perfect.
no.
Okay, so this is just what they gave us, okay?
Yes.
Okay, so we have time to
So
take
we
a
have,
look at this.
right,
And is there one of these for all the council members? Or is it just for a committee?
yes.
Is it in our package? Okay, great.
Mhm.
All right.
Yep.
Anything else? Anything, members?
No, ma'am.
Okay,
We adjourn.
yeah.
Well, I
Oh,
have,
sorry.
sorry. This crosswalk priority list, will this get moved to council? I mean, because we received it now, what are we doing
Right.
with it?
I know it's another,
I think we need time
just
to
a FYI.
look at it.
If I say, I think this is just like at the beginning of this discussion and coming up. Something we need. I think this is just the vice head's, recommendation, their priorities, and I think we're gonna get other priorities. And I think in the meantime, Bonnie can have the discussion with SCDOT and explore those options if they pay for the materials and we do the work. So I think right now, I don't know that there's a decision that has to be made. We're just gonna continue to build that list and.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And we have that committee to, I think, help council make all of these decisions. So I'm thankful for that. All right. Now.
Move adjourn. Move adjourn.
And we have a second?
Yes.
All in favor of adjournment?
Thank you.
Record breaking.
I'm gonna be boring from all this.
Huh?
Mine's gonna be boring compared to all the rest of this good stuff. Oh, what? I'll make this quick. Yeah, don't let me forget that. Our model, it's not mine.
All right, I'll go ahead and call the May Finance Committee meeting to order and turn it over to you, Ms. Rhonda.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. You have before you the April financial report.
And I believe this is my second favorite month of the year. One of those months where we have, we're in the black instead of in the red for the month. You have total revenues of, just under $5 million. It was a big, business license month, as we'll discuss a little bit later. Our year-to-date revenue is just under 33 million. Expenses for the month were 3.2 million. Year-to-date is, 38.8. We had our transfers in were from hospitality. So our net profit, as you will, or revenues over expenses for the month was just over 2 million. And for the month, we're still about $3 million in a deficit position. That should change through next month in June. Revenues. Here's the details of the revenues. The property taxes, we did collect a little bit, $639,000 for a total of 17.3. We have met our budget and we're over budget by about 368,000 thus far. We'll have a little bit more come in the next 2 months, but we've generally collected what we're going to collect for property taxes. But I'm very happy we have met our budget. Licenses and permits. Business licenses is the big item for the month, 3.3 million. Actually, I can't remember what it was to date, about 6.2 or 6.3 million. So we have met our budget for business licenses as of today. The business license for insurance, that will come in a little bit later this month and in June. So we should, hoping that we'll come in on budget for that. Building permits is another large item, 85,000 for the month, almost just shy of budget for the month, but we have already met budget to date in May for this particular category. So license and permits, we collected just under 3.6 and year-to-date 9 million. Municipal court fines were consistent from previous months with 31,000 and year-to-date 250. Local option sales tax, 569,000 for year-to-date of 3.7. The Parks and Rec income, 37,000 for the month with just under 400,000 for year-to-date. There was probably a few days of April that did not get booked on this particular report just because there was a quick turnaround. We couldn't get everything booked. Reflect next month. Miscellaneous revenues, total of 136,000, year-to-date 2 million. And of course, the transfer from hospitality tax. Any questions on revenues or any of the summaries? Mr. Brown, it is interest income is in that category. The money we bill the school district for SROs is in that category. Any kind of sale of assets or surplus of assets is in there. We own the property along Richardson, the rentals on that. We have cell tower space we rent. So we collect rent income. So if it doesn't belong in one of the other categories, I'll put it in here.
And revenue projected is always, you've got that definitely including the taxes, correct? Property taxes.
Revenue projected.
Yeah, I'm sorry, you hadn't gotten there quite yet. I'm getting ahead of myself. We'll wait till you get there.
So any other questions on those reports? Okay, impact fees. We collected a little residential and commercial. Year to date, we've collected 660,000 in residential. And it didn't total my about 430,000 for commercial. That needs to be corrected. I apologize. We didn't have any expenses this month in impact fees. I did transfer the 622,000 for the Fire Station 6, which was funded, expensed in the general fund. We were expending part of that out of impact fees. So basically we have spent all of our impact fees for fire to date on that. I think we have a couple other purchases that we've kind of planned out of impact fees. Any other comments?
hospitality and accommodations. Local hospitality, $488,000 for the month, and expenses of 361, for a surplus of 127. Our surplus year to date is 87,000. We're right on, maybe just slightly under what we have projected. June's usually a good month because that's actually May travel and some of that, April travel and May. Local accommodations, that is consistent. We have not very many expenses out of there, 37,000 for the month and 340,000 for the year. Any questions on any of that?
Ronnie, you say right now we're tracking as expected on that one. Was it HN ATAX?
Mm-hmm.
And all right, we're 80. Okay.
Yeah, we don't.
Catching up now.
Don't
June.
usually put a budget together on
Right.
local ATAX,
Yeah.
but it's consistent with the previous year.
Okay. And those, I guess, the next 2 months will come in a little stronger too. with it being,
It should.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, last item is the stormwater fund. Again, most of this revenue comes in with the tax revenue in December, January, and February. We did have a little bit of revenues come in of 27,000 and our expenses of 353. So obviously we had deficit position for the month. Year to date, we're in a positive position of $626,000. Any comments on that? Questions? Okay, I wanted, Lisa and I spoke and kind of wanted to just revisit the budget and where we left off for our budget retreat. And I think we were charged with a couple of different things to try to make the numbers work. So I wanted to go over those with you and explain kind of what we did, where we landed, in anticipation of having a budget ordinance first reading on Thursday. So one of the items was the personnel for the budget. We obviously wanted to reward and kind of get our minimum wages up a little bit more. So what I looked at was increasing the under $17 an hour folks by $1. Do that in July. Put a 3% COLA together for everybody else in July. In January, put a 5% merit in place for everyone, even the $15 and $16 folks put the merit in place for that. That actually gives us a blended rate of about 5.575. Thank you, Mr. Jackson. That was a good suggestion. Then it gives us also time to kind of implement a good merit program, making sure all the department heads are trained, that we have a good form or a good process that department heads that we want to use, so that we can implement that effectively. And again, I have some certainly information on here, but January, I think, just gives us the time to effectively implement it, and it actually saves us a little bit of dollars, frees up some dollars in our current year budget that we can actually accomplish a few other things. Any questions about that or comments? You know, I'm open, I can change anything. I'm just coming to you with where we are. So I'm looking for input from all of you folks on what you like, what you don't like, and some consensus to move forward.
Council members?
Yeah, so we're trying to lift up the lower paid employees. Are we making sure that they're not exceeding the people who have been here longer or a step above them?
Compression is
Or
certainly.
we're just compressing it, right?
Compression is certainly an issue, and I think that will be kind of up to the department heads when they get the rest of the pool of money to kind of sort that out, and who's doing a good job and who's deserving of that. That is an issue. I mean, we dealt with that the last go around when we tried to do that, and it's not perfect, but
Yeah, I know we're labeling it as, as a COLA and, then a merit later on down the road. Are we thinking like we've done in years past where it's just been at least always call it a bucket of money? to give our department heads and have them, determine what best fits their system that they've established for a pay scale in their departments?
I think so. I mean, I think with the merit, I mean, you may have somebody that gets 2, you may have somebody that gets 5, you may have somebody that gets 6, you know. I think it gives them some flexibility.
Yeah, I
Um,
always appreciated that aspect as far as managing a larger department with as a town, we have such a diverse workforce of what their missions are that it's hard to have just a one size fits all merit system that says, okay, you're gonna get X amount of dollars if you do Y. And having it across the board is just, it's next to impossible. So I'd always appreciated that when we were able to do those things to make them fit into department specific issues. So,
And the way I understand it, public safety kind of has, something that works for them, or they have a working model that they can build on. For the most part, I think that administrative departments probably don't. Public Works probably has a pretty good, model too. They have a lot of people to manage. You have to.
Right.
So I think, it's probably me and the administrative side that probably needs the most help and structure and framework.
And with this, are we increasing the minimum wage to $17 an hour for all new positions going forward?
I think that's what we've got in there. I believe that's what we got in there.
I think right now it's at 15, so we'd be
Yeah.
going to 17.
Will be 16. So 15 went to 16, 16 went to 17. So
Okay.
anything that's $15 an hour will be $16 an hour.
Why not 17? When was that decided on?
When I was just working the numbers, I mean, I can, $2 just escalated the amounts a little bit. Maybe we can push into that. I mean, I
I
can
was
work
gonna
them.
say, I think based on discussions with department heads also, the one-on-one
Yeah.
discussions with department heads. I think that does make an even, stronger case for the compression issue, that based on those discussions, this made a little bit more sense to step up a little bit more gradually.
Yeah, and you could even do that during a probation period or something. Every so months you get reevaluated
Mhm.
and then you get something for that, like for the first year. And we talk about compression. I don't think it's not a bad thing. It's a great thing because normally we do raises by percentage. And 1% at the top of our pay scale is way more than $2. So for these people to get $2 to come up from the minimum is nothing compared to what other people have gotten in the future, which really separated our pay scale.
And I'll say to that, Councilman Jackson, I agree with that as well. It's even as far as calling it a 3% of COLA, in a department where you could have somebody that at the top making over $100,000 a year, and you also got somebody in the same department making 35,000 a year. The 100,000 department, they're getting they're getting a lion's share of that available resources to give raises. So I've always liked the tiered approach where and that, we're getting in the weeds a little bit here, but not if we define it as COLA, that's it though. That's it's COLA, it's 3% across the board and everybody's getting 3%, which
I liked what Councilman said. So whenever we give the COLA to people making, over 100,000 or 80 or whatever the arbitrary number is, they are getting more than someone say at 40 or 50,000. Is there not a way to make that a little bit? I mean, I don't know how you would do that, but
I guess we could tier it. I haven't really looked at that. My thought on, especially on department heads, which is the population generally you're talking about, is that would totally be kind of up to our town administrator or something.
But then at the same time, if the department heads are getting 5% merit, maybe they would be
more likely, well, surely off of performance review, but they would be more likely, I'm sure, to give that to others over their self, I'd imagine as well. So maybe it's.
Any other questions on the personnel? I'd just like to thank Rhonda for, working hard and the feedback that was given from council on the personnel issues. But I think the structure that you presented provides the department heads a lot of flexibility in how to manage their departments with that 5% merit increase. And I think that can help with all these challenges. And each department head kind of knows what their staff needs in regards to retention and motivation. So I think this gives them a lot of flexibility. So thank you.
One last question on that. This says the town administrator is implementing, so the department heads will do the performance reviews. Those would be given to town administrator and she would be, I just was reading that it says the town administrator is responsible. How does that look?
I might have not phrased that properly. So I think my intention was the town administrator would then, they would be responsible for reviewing the department heads and putting the merit plan in place for the department heads.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying that.
Let me get this 2 cents worth in. I know we scuffled with this when we talked about it at the budget retreat. When we talked about $15 an hour and we talked about merit pay. Personally, I'm opposed to merit pay. I've said that before. This is not only the first year that I've said that. I think it's gives the department heads a little too much flexibility in picking and choosing or being subjective as to who gets, 2% or 3%, whatever, of the 5%. I wish we had a more egalitarian system for dealing particularly with the lower paid employees. And we all seem to have some empathy and sympathy for them when we were talking about the budget. But, here we are back again with giving monies to the department heads to take care of their people. And I just wonder how fair this is.
Well, and one thing I'll add to that, I understand what you're saying, Councilman Brown, but if they do have performance reviews, especially that have to be signed by the supervisor, department head, and the employee, and the employee has a right to write in some comments, or they can set goals together, then that can be then provided to, those could be, performance reviews could be provided to Lisa for another checks and balances system. Or that was just one suggestion, but if you have others.
No, and in regards to the merit system, at least this implementation gives 6 months to make sure that the town administrator is pleased with the department's approach to evaluating their staff before applying the merit increase. So I hope that gives you some confidence through the process that it'll have a process that will be established and approved by the town administrator.
Yeah, and I think, for me, I like the merit because at Bosch, they would always announce what the total pay raise was, 3%. So if you got above 3%, that reinforces that I'm doing pretty good. If you get 3%, I can get by with this. If you get less than 3%, it's either I need to change what I'm doing or find another job. Because when they start dipping below, those people usually end up gone in time.
And we do want it to be objective, and I say the certainly the structure of it is very important of how we implement that. We'll get some assistance from HR and other resources to help with that.
All right, go ahead, Ms. Rhonda. Thank
All
you.
right. Next item is the capital. You know, one of the things that we had, left off of the capital, recommended capital list was the Purvis system. And not that we didn't think it was very important, but, we just only had so many dollars to go around. Actually implementing this personnel kind of did free up some dollars. I did speak with, Captain, Chief Melcher, and, they're looking at some other alternatives for the Purvis system too, maybe phasing it. And I think we'll have some dollars, I believe, from ARPA that might be able to cover the rest of this. But I wanted to allocate 265,000 anyway, to this particular project, so we could kind of go ahead and get this implemented. I think we all recognize the importance of this, certainly this expenditure.
Yeah, I guess the question I have, we might want to answer, one, before we do the safety complex. And two, this is the question of teaming up with the county on their dispatch service, and what do they have similar?
I think they're currently using the Purvis system, I believe, so.
Pardon me?
They're currently using Purvis.
So if we were to move over there, we would be in their system. Or we could use their system.
It could cross over if that were to ever happen. It's a compatible system to work. And can we come back to this in about maybe 3 minutes?
Oh, yeah, we
But
can.
I was gonna ask that with the 265,000 that we have set aside for it, does that go ahead and get the ball rolling?
It will.
We can
It
put out
will.
our, we don't even have, this would be a sole source purchase, I assume, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, through Motorola, so yeah, it's through Motorola.
But-
Okay, but,
So, you know, wiring each firehouse, obviously Station 1, you wouldn't do, you know, in that, the one we were redoing,
what's that?
Station 1.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, the head, yes, sir.
So we wouldn't necessarily make a lot of changes to that particular firehouse
Right.
until we, you know, got a little further in.
Pull the hardware out of it and then. Right, right.
Hmm.
Dispatch would go first and then get them up. Yeah, other stations, because dispatch would take care of Station 1.
If we implement it in dispatch, whatever gets sent from wherever dispatch is, will be into Station 1. We will just have to
Already.
backing up fit the speakers and the lights.
Right, okay.
To fit into the new station.
Yeah.
We can roll that in the cost of the station.
New hardware.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it sounds like there's some options as far as, you know, phasing it, some things that just make it a little more maybe affordable for us to attain in the short term.
Still may come right back to the sun.
Okay, that's fine.
The 265,000 that was freed up from operations, is that operations from fire budget or from overall?
From overall, I mean, really, you know, I had a 6% increase for personnel at the budget retreat. And so you go down to an effective 5.575. So that frees up almost 0.5% of funding.
So I did have a question on that. You had at the budget retreat, that originally we were at 37 million, for personnel, but then it went down once you revised it to 36 million.
Yeah.
906. So, it went down roughly $300,000 in personnel from original to revised. Do you know why that is?
Yes, I had a 6% increase at budget retreat. And so by doing the 3% in July and 5% in January as an estimate, that averages out to less than 6%. So that's why it went down. And that's really where the money was freed up in.
Okay.
Okay. Purvis is done. Okay. The next item I have on this particular list, which you may or may not want to discuss now, is the Dorchester County Community Outreach. You know, that has effect on my fund balance if you choose to do that and fund it out of fund balance. So it's really why I kind of brought it to this discussion and if I need to include it in the budget or not.
So as of right now, what you presented tonight does not have it included. Is that correct? What you sent us in the packet is not included yet. Is that correct?
No, it is not.
Okay, it's not.
It's
Okay.
not. On my fund balance presentation.
Yes, ma'am.
It is on there just to show you what fund balance would look like.
Right.
But I can include it in my budget ordinance if it's something that you want me to do.
I think that was the, motion made at the budget retreat was to include it in the
Okay.
budget ordinance. But it did have stipulations, and I see here you have on the condition that a lien be placed on the property if it ceases to be used for that public purpose of, and that was,
Yes, sir.
That's-
That was,
Okay.
that was the, and we had, did we have any other, there was some
I think everything's
GW,
been,
we were good to go?
everything's been reviewed by council and the administrator,
Okay,
any of those concerns.
okay, thank you.
Yeah, looking at it, I felt like we were extremely conservative. Since I've been on council, looking at the finance committees that I've attended for the revenue, projected, we were always over 100%, in taxes. So here on the revenues projected, we had, it says 43 million, 147, and revised, we're still at that. I looked up all of the town of Somerville real estate sales in the past 12 months, and we've had 244 total real estate sales. So we know that all those properties are going to get reassessed, as well. So, plus I think we only had $80,000 in the budget for property sales. But we've got sidewalk projects at 500,000 total in the budget. But we should see, based on, since I've been on council the past few months, we've hit over 100% in revenue projections. We've been over budget. Plus, I know of the 244 real estate sales that will be impacted to us as well. Based on that, I would really love to see that maybe we take a little less conservative approach, or we take into effect those items, to add more than 500,000 to the sidewalk project, considering I know for me, being on council, that's, I'm sure the other council members too, I'd imagine that's the number one complaint I receive, that and trash pickup, which I think we should also implement software for that complaint system to make it easy for the public. So I think that there's more revenue that we should be able to pull from and use. I also feel like, better pay for our people, the retiree health coverage, third-party de-escalation training, which I think Dwight is a great choice for that, is all things that we need to have planned for properly in the budget. So having a minimum wage at just 16, I don't know, it really gets us the best of the best.
I understand. Sometimes it's kind of hard to juggle all of it. I did take a little bit of a conservative approach because right now I usually have some better numbers from Dorchester County by now. But because of reassessment, I don't. So I'm basically I'm looking at an 8% increase over where I'm looking at our projected tax revenues to end. If I didn't use fund balance to fund capital, I would feel a little more comfortable being a little more aggressive on the revenue side. We need to get that almost $2 million back. So we need a surplus of almost $2 million because we don't need to continually use our fund balance. I feel like we're going to hit that this particular fiscal year. It's kind of hard when all your money starts to come in at the end, you get a little nervous. But I'm hoping we'll get there, and we really need the same for next year. If we're going to use $1.8 million of fund balance, then I need to be $1.8 million conservative, in my opinion. Now, if y'all want to take a different risk, y'all just tell me.
Well, after, we do have, of course, the budget ordinance is going to be presented at full council And then we have a full month. That's just first reading.
Right.
We have a full month for this type of input and conversation to continue as we move into second reading. So just keep that in mind.
And I think if we identify additional revenues that we are going to get in even after we passed a budget, I mean, you all as a body can decide to spend additional funding, however you wish.
I was just gonna say that, is that a possibility if an additional funding came that we saw? Could we say, hey, let's put another chunk of this over in sidewalks or
Right.
something?
Yeah. Just a traditionally, we just haven't, I think that's what it really comes down to. We historically as this body, I wasn't a part of this body back then, but I was on the other side of it. Just doesn't, and I'm not criticizing, it just wasn't a practice that was taken advantage of, to, so to speak, to utilize the dollars that are available to try to do some things to make improvements, such as maintenance, for example, for one thing. But and then I got stuff I could go into, Ms. Rhonda, but I for the sake of I've caused enough trouble for one night, I'm gonna kind of try to close my mouth a little bit for a little while and talk to you a little sidebar and some stuff. I appreciate your conservativeness 100% in the approach that you take to our budgeting. It's got us to where we are now, as was just explained to us, to where we've gotten back to, which is nothing short of amazing. So hats off to you for that.
I was gonna say the same thing, and I remember a time where we weren't as conservative, and then it just things really hit us bad for a couple years. In fact, I was just looking at something that was in the newspaper from 2009. We didn't give raises to any of our employees for that year, and I think there was another time that they didn't get any raises for like a year and a half. And so to be on the conservative side, I think we're better that way, and then putting some more money in if we end up seeing that we have a surplus.
Yeah. Beth, can you
My
switch the
opinion.
slide, please? I'm sorry, I didn't realize y'all didn't have that on your screen. So this is really the same thing you looked at budget retreat. It's just the where we were at budget retreat and the recommended. And I'm sure you all had a chance to look at that. There is not much difference except for the around $300,000, the 265 for Purvis. I left the capital expenditures obviously are 2.1. I left the use of fund balance at 1.8, roughly 1.8. So it is essentially the same, couple numbers changed across departments. So I will be compiling this, and probably the Dorchester County outreach will probably be under non-departmental. And so we'll have a bigger use of fund balance by 250,000, which I'll show in just a moment. Any questions on that?
Council members, any other questions?
No,
Right. Thank you, Ms. Rhonda.
Okay,
she's
I
got-
I
you
do
got one
want,
more.
I'm not finished, sorry. So I think of fund balance as that little tiny baby that you're taking really good care of. And we really need to protect it. And so this is the same graph that you saw at budget retreat. It has the 250,000 that we'll use for DCCO and the 1.854 for the budget allocation. That brings our unassigned down to 15.8. Our target unassigned is almost 13 million. That's a couple $1 million, but that doesn't go very far. So, we're fine. But again, I need to be $1.8 million conservative in this budget for next year to be happy standing up here talking about this. Also, as our revenue goes up, that 30% target goes up. So it's almost like you got to save 30% of your revenue to add to that. The target unassigned at 6/30/22 was just over 11 million. So, roughly 16.6 million we've increased in that length of time. So just a kind of a presentation of what that looks like based on the budget that I've laid out at this point.
This is where I do have a question here, and then just not a question as much as a comment.
Okay.
So I did just a little quick math. So our target unassigned is 12.9 million, basically 13 million, might as well say. We're gonna sit almost 16 million, like you were talking about. That's $3 million basically above our target. I just feel like, and which is, once again, I totally appreciate your conservativeness and yes, our fund balance is a little baby that we need to hug and snuggle and all that good stuff, but we also have some needs out there that are still outstanding that Purvis is one that I'd really love to see us, even if we flirt with this extra 3 million, a little more for two items. Two items I was thinking about, our police department asked for 20 replacement cars. I think we funded 10. Is that correct? You know, we've always underfunded our police car replacements. You know, I just wonder how long that's gonna be before that bites us. And I just don't want to see that happen. I did some math with that. It looks like about 430,000, we could add 5 more cars to the list. 5 more cars, and then the rest of Purvis, and you know, we would still be 2.5 million, you know, little less than 2.5 million above what our target is, you know, projected, which would also cover your 1.8 that we're, you know, worried about for, you know, that we've transferred in. We got to make sure we cover for next year at the end of the year and all that good stuff. So those are just 2 items that were on my mind that we can, for our public safety departments, that once again is our number 1 priority as a town. No offense, Amy, don't get mad at me for saying that, but our number 1 priority as a town is public safety. And I just feel like those are 2 areas that we should be pushing to get this funding for. 2 ideas that I guess I should add for that.
I agree, but I think we still haven't really planned for the capital we need to buy every year. I mean, one year the police got no police cars, 0. And like you said, I think might have been 1 year we did it out of general fund to buy what they needed and.
When I guess, you know, with the 2 million, this 2.25 million that's still available out of above our target unassigned, you know, if we could start rolling that into, you know, if revenues, of course, have to come in as projected, and I know it's a big if, I'm not even a gambler, but I'm pretty confident that that's a pretty safe bet. I don't want to call it a lock of the year, but it's pretty good safe bet, especially with the reassessments coming up, and as Tiffany said, real estate transactions are taking place. Property values in our town aren't going down, and so, which is a good thing.
Correct.
But, you know, these things are just helping our case on why, you know, why it would be okay to kind of take the rest of that funding and set it aside for a future capital plan that we could start funding sooner rather than later, or paying down some, I don't know how much high interest rate debt we have. I know we have the setting aside to start paying off the TIF bond a little bit sooner, things of that nature that could free up future funding even faster. So those are just some thoughts I have. And since we are moving forward with Purvis, and I know we have that in the back pocket, I would like to see more police cars funded in this budget, that we can talk about that between first and second reading, of course. But that's just where my mind is. I wanted to throw it out there.
Okay.
Can I ask, when the fund balance policy was passed at 30%, where did that number 30% come from? Was it just a vote by council? Was there research done?
We looked at some other fund balance policies of other institutions, and really what that is my cushion from July 1 to December 31st. And that's about what my spend down is before tax dollars start to come in. So that's really what the fund balance is. It's just my safety net, the savings that I will spend down between July 1 and 12/31 or January.
And by safety net, I just want to clarify, that provides you the ability to cash flow until revenue comes in.
That's correct.
It's not just
a
safety net.
Okay.
It's required from a cash flow standpoint.
That's, yes. Thank you for clarifying that, because I was looking, the Government of Financial Officers puts out a recommendation for fund balance policies and how much, and they had 7 to 19%, but I think they're using that in a different method, not covering, maybe that's not a fiscal year budget or something like that. They're not using it in that way.
The only dollar figure that we have that's really locked in outside of the 30% is the $5 million which is for disaster recovery,
That's correct.
which is a component. That's pretty important.
Yeah,
Um,
which was increased. Yeah.
To piggyback off of several items discussed here, I know we talked about having kind of a vehicle fleet management policy developed. I'd love to see if we have any preliminary data, especially on our police cars, because I know we have delayed in fulfilling those obligations of, what was it, 16 cars per year? That was decided at some point in time.
That was a while ago.
It was a while ago, but it's something that we obviously never did. But if we do have some data that supports us being greatly behind in that effort, I'm with Councilman Waring, that we would want to consider it, because all we're doing is kicking the can down the road and the ball is getting bigger as we go. So just to make sure we have that before second reading. Sorry, go ahead. Anything?
So, as the newest member of council, I'm going to reserve the right to keep asking stupid questions.
That's good. That's
Um,
good.
They'll all nod in agreement that it's a stupid question. Is each department responsible for their own asset management, or is that centralized? Is there some database where we know where every car, every truck, every lawnmower, or is that within each department?
I think that's within each department. I do have a comprehensive depreciation schedule, and obviously we have it on insurance policy. But it's on my depreciation schedule as police. You know, whether it's which team it belongs to, or if it's an SRO or anything like that, I wouldn't necessarily know.
So is there ever a situation where a police car is blown an engine and it's sitting at the public works yard? Nobody knows it's sitting there except the police department, and we're still paying insurance on it. We're still paying, I'm using police as an example, but is there a case to be made to have some master list of all of our assets? And if so, is that a function of finance, or is that a function of vehicle maintenance?
I think it's probably vehicle maintenance, but.
Yeah, and I think that's really what we've been talking about for the last several months is the need to have something, you know, a comprehensive plan, a comprehensive replacement policy. But it is our maintenance department that actually tracks every vehicle. You know, if they are made aware of a vehicle that's, I guess, going to be offline for whatever reason, then finance should be notified so that it can be removed.
I don't know that we have a process in place for that. And
Right,
I don't
right.
know. I'm sure that happens. I'm
I
sure
believe
that
at one
happens.
time it was all done with fleet maintenance, basically Dan's shop, when it was
Mhm.
Dan's shop. They took care of everything, and I think just as the town's grown, the police department's got more cars now, the fire department's got more cars now, vehicles now. Those larger departments have kind of taken over their own asset management because they're closer to it, and I think that's what's happened over time. And
we-
that's what I experienced. So.
We have software out there for, you know, for fuel and all that. And I know some of it's automatic and some of it's tracked. I suspect there's probably more capabilities than what we're using. I haven't been out there to dig in or.
My
figure that
understanding is
out.
they still keep everything. Right. I guess, I guess you guys still, fleet maintenance still keeps everything. It's just a matter of
Yeah.
He assigns an asset number to each.
everything.
He
Yeah.
does that all.
Right.
He stays on top of it. So he helps us out quite a bit.
And I think just recently, didn't he send a list out to cross-check to insurance company? So,
Yeah, I think they were too.
and we have an asset number, but where it is today, I mean, where the vehicle itself is today, I don't know, like where it's assigned to. That's what my point was.
Councilman, I think it's a very good comment, because vehicles are one thing, equipment's another, buildings are another. Asset management is something I think everybody recognizes we can improve on. Very good point.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. The only other comment that I'd like to add about the budget is, I will be adding, I think we'll probably be a tiny bit short on TIF money as we're projecting it, for this year. So I'll probably have a TIF revenue, a TIF expenditure. There'll be a transfer from the roads fund. I don't think it's gonna be more than $100,000. But I've got to get some information from the county to justify that.
And just to clarify, the TIF is performing better than we originally modeled.
That's correct.
However, there is still a shortfall, a much smaller shortfall than it would have been based on the model,
That's correct.
but still needs to take care of it.
Yeah, and I kind of think that's the last year this will happen because any increases due to reassessment goes to the TIF. So that should really bolster the TIF fund at that point.
Just for that area though, right? Just for the TIF area, not everywhere else.
Right.
Unless
Okay.
it's public safety, right?
No.
If it's public safety related, it's outside, it could be outside the TIF or just for the new public safety headquarters.
No, just in a general reassessment process, any increase, the base that we get for our general fund will always be the same. So if the property value goes up, any increase in that property value is assigned to the increment in the TIF, which means the TIF itself gets the revenue, not our general fund.
And that represents about 16 to 17% of our total budget or assessed area.
That's
correct?
correct.
Yeah.
That's correct. And as values go up around us, that percentage will become less and less too, the base.
All right.
Anything else?
Excellent discussion. Anything else from Ms. Rhonda?
Thanks, Ron.
Thank you. for-
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you for all your input.
Ready for Chris?
Oh. Goodness gracious.
Well, that's
We are setting, we are setting
retiree
the
health
wrong kind of
insurance
record.
program.
Yeah.
All right, I'll make this quick. I just have one slide on here. Continuing, some of you may, and this is with regard to, taking assessment and analysis of, providing retiree insurance, another step down the line in the analysis. You may recall the top portion of the slide from Budget Retreat. And that specifically was for those with 20 years of service with the town. So what I was tasked with was then layering that over the course of several years and seeing cumulatively what would that look like from a cost perspective. Specifically, we chose the 20-year. I will say that after the Budget Retreat, I was approached by several managers and had conversations with various people, and I personally feel that 20 years I would recommend as making that a minimum number of years of service to the town. I just think that's reasonable, and that level of commitment really is warranted to be able to provide that. There are a number of parameters that you have to just make a decision on where to draw that line and so forth. Another one that we chose on this after looking at it was also to make a minimum age of 50 years to qualify. So 50 years old. So you have to retire under the South Carolina retirement system under PEBA. You have to have at least 20 years with the town specifically and 50 years old minimum. That would give someone, if they were just 50 years old, a window potentially of being on our coverage for up to 15 years before they aged out at the age of 65. So taking the same sort of assumptions, although with the minimum age limit of 50, because our previous example back at the Budget Retreat using this included people in their 40s. So that trimmed down the number of people that would be eligible. And what we've got here is at several points along the way, you can see year 1, year 5, our premium amounts We carried that over the average mix of the different levels of plan, $1,070 a month. And we used the same funding by the town, that is 30% the town kicking into the premium, the employee or the retiree, that is paying the other 70% of the premium. So as you work down through, you can see you have people layering on the numbers and so forth after 5 years, estimating that 30% that the town kicks in would be 150,228. And then it starts to taper off because also, and I should mention this, by cutting that sample or that group down that we have currently as employees and making a minimum age of 50 to be able to qualify for this, the average age of that group of our employees that falls into that category right now is 58 years old, or just over 58. So what that would give you is, on an average, you know, you're going to have over the span of 50 to 65, there'll be people at various ages in that. But if the average is 58, that means on average, you're looking at 7 years for a given group to age out over time. So that's why you see at the 7-year mark, it starts to level out as far as maximum people. And basically by the 8th year, you've hit that. And the estimate would be, again, for our 30% portion as a town, $181,044 a year. And you're basically going to track along those same lines unless something radical happens over time.
So with this plan, if a police officer or a fireman comes on at 21 years old and they stay till 45, and they've been dedicated the whole time, they would not qualify for this?
If we utilized, or if we implemented this and did so with the 50-year, the minimum age of 50, you are, as a group, are making this decision. So those different parameters, this was just a suggested one. There's also an element of, and your point is well taken as far as that is service, and that is 20 years of service or 25 years of service. There's also an element of someone who retires in their mid to late 40s could be on our insurance for another 20 years. And I'm not saying there's not necessarily something wrong with that, but there might also be some prudence in setting certain caps or limits just to protect us from that standpoint.
I think we're kind of safe there anyway. If a fireman comes on at 18, they got to do 28 years to be eligible to retire from force. It's 28 years now, I believe. Isn't that correct? So, they come on at 18, they got to work, they have to work 28 before they can retire, before they're eligible to retire. So they're, what's that, 50, 40,
it's
46, 46.
Yeah,
so,
it's
yeah,
starting
46,
to get,
47. Yeah. And that's if they started at 18, and, you know, that's the youngest you can start. So,
yeah,
they're 21. Now that's 3 years. Now you're 49. So I'd work an extra year to get insurance if I retired. So that's, just something to consider there as well.
That's a good point. And I had that reference with me at the budget retreat. I don't have that slide in here, but the requirements of PIBA, both under PORS and SCRS, also add an element of that pushes that age up a little bit as well. They could potentially still be in their late 40s, but again,
close enough
to your point, Councilman. Yeah, close enough to go, yeah, I'll stay around for another year or two to get to that point. So.
If an officer or a fireman get hurt on the job, not, you know, just a back injury or whatever it might be, and they have to retire early, do they qualify for anything?
If they get injured, and GW weigh in if I missed something here, but typically, again, if it was on the job, that's going to typically fall under workers' comp. And there's a certain structure and so forth that usually, if it's career ending, they build in medical, basically medical treatment for life. If they assess that's what the damage resulted in for the individual.
And confirm that comes out of the state accident fund or some other fund? That doesn't come from the town, correct?
That is
That's
correct.
why we pay into that. So that doesn't come off the town's budget.
Correct. The municipal association's workers' comp unit, there is a fund for that with that organization that funds those things. And that's driven off loss experience for all the participating municipalities, so.
Any other questions? Well,
So
thank
as
you,
of right
sir.
now, this plan is not included in our budget ordinance. Is that correct? Nothing's, and this is just information for us, so we understand where the fault would be for the situation. I know we discussed it at length at the budget retreat, but
Correct.
kind of left it tabled at the time, just kind of flat. So, okay, thank you.
Right, yeah, we were just tasked with bringing you back follow-up information. Yeah.
And
Well,
go ahead.
I'll say, I've been in support of this the whole time, but I have talked to a couple employees that are eligible and they are also in support of it, of course. But they're like, as soon as we get that, I'm gonna retire. And so we have to keep in mind, if 20 people are eligible, we might have some people ready to retire. So
Sure.
that might be something we have to consider for additional hires, or maybe it's a phased approach if, I don't know, over a year. I don't know.
Well, I was gonna say, if council chooses to implement this, obviously the hit to our budget for this first year would be the 35,000. Right, and then it would have to be taken into consideration moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
I guess this is my biggest concern. Once we step into this, we're locked into the 181,044. So that's just something to consider. I would never want to take this step without full intention of on 2 years to come. So.
Right.
And
And-
let me clarify this annual cost for 1 year, 35,000, that's for 9 employees right now,
Mhm.
correct?
And then in year 2, it doubled, and then year 3, it doubled from there, just to,
And then you'll start to see some attrition trickle in for various
Mhm.
life circumstances and so forth. I solicited, and this is a finance committee, but I will throw in on this note, last thing. I will say, regardless of what you decide from the standpoint of the town contributing to this, if you decide to implement it, please consider strongly still allowing retiree insurance, even if they pay 100%. I think it would go a long way from a retention standpoint, just from all the conversations I've had. So
I definitely like that idea too. I'm 100%
thank you.
favor of that. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Authorization to purchase a 2025 Freightliner M2106 debris truck funded by budgeted ARPA funds in the amount of $141,300 through Sourcewell, and the request is from the Streets Department.
I'll make a motion that we approve that.
second.
All right, motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it.
Authorization to surplus and sell Parks and Recreation Vehicle R65, a 2002 Ford F-250 with 128,198 miles.
The mayor make a motion that we authorize it.
Second.
All right, motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it.
Discussion of proposed 2024 CDBG action plan.
Council members, we've all had an opportunity to review the draft plan that's now under public notice. Ms. Pam is coming up for any comments, questions,
Yep.
discussion.
Good evening. I met with Lisa and the mayor, and what I emailed you guys was what we thought was the best option for the town. We don't know our actual amount yet. I was hoping to have that by now, but HUD has not let us know yet, but we're based it on last year, so it's around 300,000.
The homeowner that was requesting, I'm sorry, were you finished?
No, go ahead. Yeah.
I'm so sorry. I think of something and it just comes out. I am so sorry. Okay, you go ahead. Yeah, are you?
I'm done. There's actually now 12 homeowners that need rehab. I got 2 phone calls in the last maybe 3 days.
Okay. The wheelchair access on Essex Drive, I know they requested that a few years ago, but we don't even know if that person is still alive or still lives there or anything. So I would like to say we exclude that until we know if that's still needed or if they're alive or.
I have gone out there myself, just to kind of look at it because I didn't understand what Mark was talking about. And they do kind of need it. There are no, so if someone is in a wheelchair, comes out of their house, they can't, their driveways are made like with a big dip, so they can't go down and they can't leave the sidewalk and just go across to the next street. They have to go all the way around or back up and go back. So
But as
Mark
I
brought
un-
that to my attention.
I understand it from Mark and from my previous conversation with you. Nobody has talked to this person in a long.
I have not.
And don't know if they still live there or not, or if this is still a need. I
These-
mean,
These home
if-
repairs, I was gonna ask, in the past, that we had someone, there was an application process for these items, or does the CDBG follow that same methodology?
We do not have a formal application process. So what happens is over the course of the year, if I get contacted or I reach out to the department heads and say, hey, what do you guys see? The residents call me and then I meet with town administrator, mayor, and then council in the end makes the decision.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna help manage it with Operation Home. So they have a list of, that's where I got the list from, all the homeowners that need rehab right now, like, roof leak, floors are sinking, wheelchair access.
In the future, I do think this should go by an application process to the public for each of these categories, limited to a certain amount, based on previous year's funding, and then council decides based on these applications, or town staff and council, however that would look. I think that would be a good idea, because there's a lot of needs in these areas, and if we're just choosing, what we think, maybe not everyone's getting the opportunity to make application because they don't know about it.
Just to clarify, this wheelchair access, this is not what we had talked about, Bonnie. Is this what we had talked about?
No, I think it's a different one.
Okay,
Is it the
because,
same one?
okay, yes. And, so, because I didn't know that I know that there's several people in the community, and at the HOAs, what they told me is, they want it to be safe so the children that are riding their bicycles can stay on the sidewalk all the way around, and they can come off one sidewalk, go across the street, get back on. Also for people that are walking with their strollers, people that are just walking their dogs, so they can come on and off without going into the street constantly, and also for wheelchair. But I was told that there was a few people that had wheelchairs in that neighborhood, and that was just recently. So, and this is just the beginning of that process, because every single one has to be done.
And they have to qualify, so they have to first be the property owner and live there, and they have to qualify financially. It's a pretty strict process they have to go through.
Okay, then maybe this is something different than what we were talking about.
Might be.
Because what type of access is this? Is this coming from their
I think it's
actual
out of their home to get to.
Oh, coming out of their house?
This is different than ADA ramps.
Okay.
With
All right,
sidewalks.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. The homeowner rehab is actually residents that live in town that have a critical need, like their roof is leaking water or their floors are sinking.
So when does the public comment period end for this and when do we need to take action?
It's gonna go before council hopefully on Thursday, and the period ends May 17th. This is just, the annual action plan is just a guide for us to use for the next year. We can change it a little bit. Like if, when we get our allocation, if it's 310,000, we can kind of move stuff around a little bit. But if you do anything major, then it's another process of advertising for a month and meeting HUD requirements.
So does this action plan require just one vote?
Mhm.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. Unless anyone has any discussion related to item H, we can move on to item I.
Mr. Mayor, I would move we adjourn.
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?